Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of the X Button, Season 4, Episode 19, also known as
I don't know.
Episode 150.
I didn't know that's what we were leading up to. Dang.
I'm your host, Alejandro, and with me on his final appearance for the next few months because of leaving for paternity leave after hitting Pound Town.
Yep. My goodness, I wish you hadn't said that on my final episode.
I was gonna throw it there.
Good Lord. All right. Well, yeah. Hey, everybody. It's Paul. What's up? Man, I'm still here, huh?
Yeah,
I
we are still here after 3 years.
I can't believe it.
And you haven't switched part time this year specifically before being basically full time since before the return we did in May 4th, 2021. So can you believe it's been 3 years now, like straight 2021, 2022, 23, and now
actually doing this and only missing like a handful of things for various many reasons, but the fact that we're still doing this and realizing that we have just that many episodes to go back and of some kind. Do you know if our video existed from the start? That was
yeah, video started May 4th, 2021 when we returned. Because
that was the big, like, the one we're calling our 3 years. Okay,
yes. Yeah, because if we were to count the mulligan, this would be episode 163 because we did 13 episodes in 2020.
Those are all audio. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and that was audio posted on YouTube too, so they are there. So that was even before the podcast services era. So it's like it's so wild. Obviously, it's like not as big of a milestone as hitting 100 episodes last year. That it was so serendipitous of hitting episode 100 for the spoiler cast for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, but it's still 150 episodes of us doing most of this, like running through. And I went to count, Paul, you only missed 10 episodes in those 3 years. 10 episodes. Because it was like the first time you missed was because of vacation. And then the second time you missed was a natural disaster. Like in 2021.
That by itself was probably a good chunk of my missing because that was like 2 or 3 weeks maybe.
Yeah,
maybe just 2.
Yeah, and then like in 2022 you barely missed. I don't think you actually missed at all in 2022. What we ended up doing was that because there was no natural disaster that year, was in your vacation to Destin, Florida that you usually go to in like late May, I knew ahead of time. Yeah, and we did an evergreen. We actually started doing evergreen episodes in 2022 to kind of cover. So 2022 you were there the entire time. Then 2023 was where you started missing more because of your move of where you are now. Like that's when Sebastian came in. So there were like 5 or 6 episodes that you were not there, and then and then you have the ones that you've been on and off again this year. So that totals to like 10 or 12 episodes total. That's still a lot of episodes that we've been doing like nonstop. And me just like going back to it's so funny, Paul. You had a haircut today, right?
Not today, but yesterday I did.
If you go back to how you looked on episode 1, it's like that's the kind of haircut.
This is pretty close. Yeah. I think what was the phrase that we had at the start of our video? It was always like, I remember back when we first started this, when all of my hair was on my beard and none of it was on my head.
Yes.
And then we would start playing the music.
Yeah, that was like what we actually said on episode 50, which is so wild. But yeah, and then but what was funny is that the special episode was 3 after episode 50 when we did still one of my favorite episodes we've ever done. You remember the games that made us, which stupid Square Enix stole our title for a video interview they did with Naoki Yoshida and Masayoshi Soken for the producer and composer of Final Fantasy 16. They had a literal title called "The Games That Made Us," where they were explaining like the games that inspired us. I was like, oh man. Good thing we're not that big.
There's truly nothing new under the sun.
Yes.
It's all been done before.
Yeah. But it's like, now the baby, Paul, is like, it's imminent now, right? Like it can happen this week.
It could literally happen. Like Elizabeth could bust in that door and say, hey, it started.
Yeah.
And that is a very strange feeling to have. Like I should take a picture of my house now because we're actually settled in. more than we were the last whole year, thanks to some friends and my mom coming by, and we just cleaned out the whole place. We put all the things away, so now it's like a real house. I've got a real PC set up again
Oh
after an
yes.
entire year of not having it, so I am so happy about that. And the baby is right around the corner, and don't know how ready I am.
Yeah,
Don't
I
know
am.
what that's gonna feel
The
like.
beauty of this is that like even though you will stop like appearing in the show for like a little bit, even though it's completely up to you if somehow there's like some free space if you want to like chime in during that time. Like your commitment is just gonna be thumbnails, at least for
Yep.
these next 3 months. Like every time that I record with whatever I record, I'm already kind of lining up people to join me while you're out. Like I was talking with Eric from Season Gaming yesterday. We were having a chat, and I asked him like if he wanted to be in within the next few weeks, and he said yes. I actually got to call our buddy PJ actually yesterday. I saw him on Discord, and I was talking to him, and he also wants to kind of be part of the show. So I'm gonna be like mixing the solo episodes that I've been doing and bringing them here and there when like the opportunity arises. Because also we're like you're ending right as showcase season starts.
I
So
know.
so
It
so
kills me, man.
yeah. So again, like I'm relinquishing like responsibilities for you to join the show. If you want to be in, you're totally free to do it. But as of right now, like you're like you're free to do whatever you want to do with that. So if you somehow think you can want to be in reacts and all that when we do like showcases, you're free to be part of it. But I'm not gonna be asking you like if within this next 3 months, I'm not gonna be like, hey, are you available this week? Hey, are you available this week? I'm already like mentalizing that. I'm making this kind of like a good temporal send off for you. So
Look at that growth from you. Not asking me if I'm gonna be out cutting grass or
uh
anything.
oh yeah, but definitely like with this being
Finally.
with this being a celebratory episode, we're gonna briefly talk about like our usual rigmarole, but I want like a good chunk of this to just remember our favorite moments from
Oh yes.
us recording the 150 episodes. I have quite a few, especially from those early days, and I feel that will hopefully kickstart your memory for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we move into that, this is just a reminder that this is the X Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursdays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing, available on the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, what have we been playing, Paul? I'll just briefly say I beat Stellar Blade. I ended up finally finishing Stellar Blade, and I posted my review for Stellar Blade over at seasongaming.com, where you can go read over at the website. I'm going to be linking it in this video. Overall, like I ended up really liking its second half. I kind of told you like this, that the first 10 hours of that game is like a 7. The second half is a 9. So I ended up giving it like an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed where it ended. I really love how, thankfully, I was right. There was more environment diversity than just the desert that game is kind of stuck in for like the first 10 hours. The story it's still living in the shadow of Nier Automata. You can absolutely like guess all the beats about are we the bad guys? Am I human or are we dancing? And it's like you understand kind of like what they're doing, but how it ends, and it has multiple endings that you can choose, makes it so that if this game was kind of like copying and living in the shadow of Nier Automata, if they follow it up, they have now set themselves up for something at least more original. Because obviously Nier Automata stopped there. Like, you know, kind of how that game ended.
Did you see that interview that they talked about? Was it the game devs talked about like why they did what they did with some of the decisions?
Yeah.
They really wanted to nail the action in their first showcase, but then in any follow-ups or sequels that they would like really push the story.
Yeah, it makes more sense because combat is the best thing about this game, and the combat just gets so exponentially better as you kind of go forward. And I have to shout out the accessibility options for this game because kind of like I mentioned last week while I was reviewing this, I suddenly became ill with man, I keep forgetting the name of that thing. It's a positional vertigo. It's like a long title. I'm actually feeling much better about, but that was messing like my hand and vision coordination while I was trying to recover from that, and I had to enable the accessibility options to go through that entire game. And it's not a cakewalk, but I could kind of like now recommend people that may be scared of this type of game, if it's gonna be too hard, that at least the accessibility of them the bottom prompts of, oh yeah, with this super hard enemy, we're gonna tell you when to press L1, when to press circle, to kind of aid you with like the harder enemies, but it's not holding your hand entirely. Through normal rank and file enemies, you still have to know when's the perfect time for you to dodge or when's the perfect time for you to parry, like when you need to do that. It just kind of helps nudge you with more difficult enemies, and there's way harder boss battles that you get later on, but the boss design of the later part is like so cool. The monster design of that game is so strong throughout, and it gets just so much more creative and grotesque later on. I really love, again, I'm such a sucker for tundras and snow, and kind of like the post-apocalyptic snowy like labs that you get like later in the game, and then you even go to space in that like later on to like fight a monster in space where you even have to use like a railgun to beat it. It's like this massive star monster that's like in like a satellite, and you're like fighting from the outside. It's like there's a lot of really cool moments in the later half that I'm at the part that if you like the combat enough, push through to at least see the later half of that game. So I'm glad I really got to see. And the New Game Plus is goddamn excellent. So good.
I've heard it's really good.
Yes, it's like beyond just adding the harder difficulty and having everything with you, more unlockable costumes, and enemy repositioning, and expanded skill tree. It's like there's just so much that makes playing through that game again so rewarding, and because at that point you're more decked out, playing the earlier parts of that game feels so much better because you're so powerful now. So how good is it that they have a New Game Plus that's this robust and adding stuff at launch, right, Insomniac?
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
That's such a foreign concept out here, but I am really just to kind of put voice to the things that we talked about over text. I'm really glad that it really pulls it out, because I was starting to very much question people's decisions on the scores they gave it.
Yeah.
And I would say that I would much prefer a strong
Beginning.
second half than yeah, like as far as like an overall experience. I mean, granted, if I'm not going to enjoy it enough in the first half, I'm not going to end up playing the second half. But if you have that word of mouth, I think overall, games that have a stronger second half are going to stand the test of time far more than the other side of that.
Because it's like it leaves a stronger impression, and there's something to be said about like a stronger last impression than a strong first impression, and then like being soured by the end. So
and look at how many times you and I have talked about a game that was 90% fantastic, but the last little piece was so bad that it just soured the entire experience.
Metroid Dread. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of that goes around, and it's the fact that we still end up bringing stuff like that up constantly kind of proves it.
And let's not forget Elden Ring. The Ellen Beast.
Yep. And a lot of other situations just like it. But yeah, so all this to say, really glad that it ended up pulling it together in your eyes. I'm going to very soon go back to it, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I obviously my mom came in town the last couple of days, and for very obvious reasons, I'm not going to be playing Stellar Blade while she's in the same room.
Yep. I will say no nudity. There's no nudity in that game.
It's just it's one of those games that kind of draws your eye whenever somebody else is in the room and just goes, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, it's a very it's the eye candy of that game is really strong. Like literally, besides just the character model, just like the quality of its aesthetics, it's like a really great looking game. So it can and also very stylish. Like there's a level of spectacle that is like very eye catching with that game. Besides the jiggle physics,
the flashes and the movements, like it's just a naturally eye-drawing game. Where even my wife, who's severely ADHD, will actually happen to notice it, because that's one of the main reasons I can keep playing things. Is my monitor is literally next to the TV. She will not notice anything that's going on here because she can barely focus on what is on the big TV.
Yeah.
So it's a win for me. So anyway, was there any other parts of Stellar Blade?
Yeah, you can go check my review. Like it's over there. I'm gonna link it in the description. So Paul, you have not been playing new stuff, but you've kind of gone back to like older stuff.
I've gone back to older things, two of which I've never played before. So it's new to me, therefore it is new. So I guess I'll start with the one that I have played before, which is Kingdom Hearts 3.
How many times, before you start, how many times have you played Kingdom Hearts 3? Just that one time?
In total, at least twice.
Mhm.
Because I played through it once regularly. I played through it a second time.
In proud
Um,
mode?
no, I did critical
Hmm.
partly, but I didn't get very far in that, so I'm not really counting it.
Hmm.
But I did play through, like, I'm pretty sure I played through the whole game twice near like the start of the game.
Hmm.
Did
Back in
they have a new
2019.
game plus?
Hmm. I think it did.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think that's what I did, and I kept my keyblades or something like that. It's a little foggy for me, but anyway, yeah. So at least twice, and then I played through the DLC once, and that's one thing that I was looking forward to this time is going back and playing Remind in the right kind of order,
Hmm.
um, because of how much context that.
We went back for Remind in 2020, the DLC.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's probably what ended up happening then. So anyway, yeah, yeah, I went back and I just kind of with fresh eyes was revisiting and letting Kingdom Hearts 3 wash over me, for lack of a better word. It is a very interesting experience in some ways, and in a lot of areas, like I know a lot of people really harped on the combat and some of the things like that, but I still really like the feel. Whenever I'm in the middle of it all, how easily it is, because even though they quote unquote take Sora's powers away, you do still have a lot more accessible to you at the very beginning of the game than you normally have at the start of a Kingdom Hearts game. Because you already have a lot of abilities, and then like half of them are selected. So you can deselect some of what you have, put some different move sets on, one of which is a changer for your aerial combo, one of them is for the regular combo. And that is where I feel like the real fun of it is. You get two starting spells very quickly. The fact that you can move and cast at the same time is really helpful. You already have both a guard and your dodge roll. Um, it's you already have the flow motions. Like they give you so much right in that starting Olympus
Yeah.
area. Like they know what's going on. They're just kind of
They
giving you
and they do that because that was an answer to Kingdom Hearts 2's beginning. That
right.
you don't have all of that. It takes 5 hours to get to play as
It's
Zora.
terrible.
Yes, that was kind of like in response. They kind of start you like with like a bang, quote unquote, like with Kingdom Hearts
Yeah.
3.
So I definitely appreciated that more when I was coming back to it because I forgot that they did that. And when I was suddenly being able to do so much more, I really appreciated it. Now, on the other hand, the rides and the decision to include Disney rides and have that as an option is just I don't know what they were really thinking. I love the concept of it, but in execution, it is way too much power that they're giving you to basically be completely invincible during the course of this event and to do so much damage to the enemies, and how often they pop. Sometimes feeling like you're dropping a nuke on like two Heartless,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that was just a weird feeling for me. But then also the immense baggage that three comes with. I had the amazing experience of allowing Elizabeth happened to be sitting next to me, and I was just kind of walking her through like, hey, this is the last one, quote unquote, that came
Mm-hmm.
out.
Took
That and
13 years to come.
yeah, took 13 years because she watched me play a little bit of the first one. So I was like, hey, look at how much it's jumped from that one to this. She's like, wow, it looks crazy. And even like, of course, Hercules, she was making fun of Hercules' outfit, and that was just so funny. She picks the weirdest things to like
She never saw the Hercules
destroy.
movie?
No, she did. It's
Oh.
just especially funny because the camera angles were giving him upskirts a lot. So
Oh.
she's just like, somebody get this man some pants. I'm saying. So we were just laughing about it together, and I was like, "Oh, look at this goofball in his mini skirt." So anyway, um, the way that we played through that opening segment and how much references to things that you would have had to play the whole series, all of the like Ansem and Zemnis and or I guess Xehanort and Zemnis, and then
Organization
um,
13.
like all of that showing up. I was like, why do these people have the black coats? And I was like, this is let me break it down for you. This is the way all of them go. Sora goes around, you have fun, you beat up stuff, and then these guys in these black robes show up and they just make you feel miserable for about 5 minutes. And then Sora responds with something along the lines of, my friends are my power, and then they leave, and then you continue on your way. And then, like, in the span of that, it happened twice. Whereas, like, almost exactly they go, oh,
Yeah,
and then he's like, but my friends are my power. I was like,
yeah.
oh my
I don't know
god.
if I don't know if you felt this with the beginning hours of Kingdom Hearts 3. It stops you from playing so often.
Oh
Takes
yeah,
yeah.
extremely. I had the Metal Gear Solid 4 flashback where I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, I just walked 10 feet forward and there's another cutscene. Oh, that is crazy."
Uh-huh.
I also forgot how long it takes you to get to the Titan fight,
Hmm.
because I was like, "Okay, I'm on the hill. I'm running up it. That's happening pretty soon. Okay,
Hmm.
there's Titan right there." And it's like, no, it's like a good 2 or 3 more hours before you get to that.
Hmm. And the fight
Um,
is cool. And then what happens
I
afterwards is also cool when you fight all
Yeah.
the Titans.
I really did appreciate that, because it's a way better opening than any of the other numbered Kingdom Hearts, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Because they throw way too much like existentialism at you in the first two,
Hmm.
of that whole situation. But then, going through all of that, oh, Elizabeth also made fun of everybody's haircuts.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, this is such a 2000s game, I can tell."
Hmm.
And then in like a moment of pause, she turned to me and went, "You wanted that hair, didn't you?" And I was like, "So badly." So that was just really funny.
Where do you stop with Kingdom Hearts 3? Like, what's the last thing you did?
I finished Olympus completely. I went on to Twilight Town and I did all of that, and then I moved on to the Rapunzel's World,
Oh,
Tangled.
so you did Tangle first before Toy Story.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think that's where they guide you, isn't it? It's like a level 14.
I think it's the
Other
opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I
actually,
like
no, no, no.
Tangled.
Yeah, actually, Tangled is like lower level, and
Yeah.
then and then the Twister is like higher
So
level.
I
But you
was
could do
just
them.
following it
Mhm.
along, with where they kind of funnel you, because I feel like I enjoy myself more when I
Mhm.
do the in order that they suggest.
Mhm.
I learned my lesson with that in New Vegas, and I've never forgotten it.
Mhm. Oh yes,
um,
especially
so
for a
it,
Fallout game.
Yes. So yeah. Anyway, I just all that is to say, it's extremely cheesy. The dialogue's horrible,
Mhm.
but man, is it comforting. Where you just kind of you sit back and you watch these little Disney characters interact with each other, and I was having these little moments where like, even when you go back to Yen Sid. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Hey, you remember that like 1940s cartoon with the sorcerer and that
Fantasia.
whole thing?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." I was like, "That's the wizard from." And she's like, "Oh yeah." And then like Jiminy showed up, and then
Mhm.
like dealing with Hercules and his crew, and then you see like Donald and Mickey showing up. It's like it's way more of like the right kind of Disney characters that they're
Mhm.
throwing to you right at the start, as opposed to Kingdom Hearts 1, where your first instinct, or example is at first, of course, Donald and Goofy, but then after that, it's Alice in Wonderland and Tarzan
Mhm.
as like the real powerhouses of the Disney IP. Let me tell you. Um, Two, I think what they had like Scrooge McDuck in the Twilight Town
Mhm.
area and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but I don't think you see any other Disney
Yeah, they
characters.
were at not Twilight Town, of Hollow Bastion. They were.
Right. It's not until you get to Hollow Bastion that it really start. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean now.
Mhm.
Okay. But yeah, they kind of held off on the Disney characters for a little while because you go from Twilight Town and then like Mulan and was Beast Castle. So
Mhm.
that was like some good options, especially for that time. But I would say that this is like the most of the like classic Disney characters that they're throwing to you at the start.
Mhm.
But in any case, it had its issues, and it certainly has a lot of them in the middle section. But I'm also glad it exists. I hope that we get a lot more of it.
Yeah.
I want more Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 4, I believe they're gonna like show more of that pretty soon because it's like
Yeah.
now that's with certain news about Square Enix that I kind of want to touch on the quick headlines today. They're due now because it's like they emptied the Final Fantasy barrel right now, as they will have to like recoup and move forward with whatever's next for that franchise. It's like, what else do they have? They have Kingdom Hearts. And it's so funny you mentioned that. I weirdly yesterday I went down like a very deep rabbit hole about how much the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer that they revealed and some of the themes that they talked about are ripped straight out of Final Fantasy Versus 13. How like Versus 13 was about death and the afterlife, and how dreams connect you more than heart, and how that now that we moved on from hearts, it's all about dreams connecting. And Kingdom Hearts 4, it's like, it's just so funny how much like the spite of Tetsuya Nomura, like, you didn't let me finish my my dream project with Versus 13 because of the stupid engine you forced me to use for like so long that didn't work. And then they ripped that game away from me and made a Final Fantasy 15 an incomplete mess from what it was originally planned. And seeing how he's just gonna rejigger all of that with
he's just gonna turn every game into Final Fantasy Versus 13 until he is allowed to finally finish it. And whether it's Barum Rex, the weirdly detailed advertisement in Toy Story's world.
I'll never forget, for as long as I live, I'll never forget how gobsmacked I was when that started playing, because I was like,
sitting there going, no way. Are you kidding me? I knew there was going to be like a rug pull moment, but there was just this moment of, are you serious? He really hasn't let this go.
Yeah. And that was like even more tenfold in one of the endings of Remind that literally ends with Baron Rex basically who's knocked us in the car. In the same car as Versus.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, he's the secret boss that you have to beat. So that whole thing happened, and now Reynatus, and now Kingdom Hearts 4. Like, this man is he is a man on a mission of spite to create his little twink boy band again.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait. Paul, and then I on my recommendation, I was like, go back to Prey, and you started playing. You're playing it on Xbox, right?
Yes. I did follow your recommendation through that. I did it originally because I wanted to finally, like, oh shoot, Arcane Austin got shut down. Let me finally go back to one of their masterpieces and sit through all of that. So let me just kind of walk through. I do have some ups and downs on it because that game's frustrating as hell.
I'll just say this, Paul, is like, I think it's kind of overrated, even though it's great.
It might be. It's so cool because in moments of the immersion, you walking around, the way the screens react to your cursor is fantastic. Going through the exploration, the map design is so cool. The world building is super awesome.
The immersive seem like flexibility that you kind of like muster is pretty cool. Like, there's ways for you to like circumvent the design. So
I don't think they should have made you wait so long for all of the cool powers, because I just got to it after what feels like a good 10 hours or something. And that there was this moment of, wow, so you just hid all of the best stuff for like halfway through. I don't even think it's halfway through the game, but
here's what happened to me when I played this. I played it in 2018. In fact, I remember it vividly because it was the game I was playing 2 weeks before I came back home, around that kind of that period, that dark period in my life. So I remember this vividly. I didn't like it in the first few hours because I found it really frustrating and obtuse. And then when everything unlocked, I was like, oh, I get it now. And then the final few hours get so unbelievably frustrating, and you'll know it when it happens. What makes it so unbelievably frustrating? I'm not gonna spoil it, but you'll know what makes it frustrating, because what they end up adding remains for like the rest of that game until like you beat it, and then the ending's kind of weird. So it's like it's a very up and down game that nowadays I see a lot of people say it's like praise an absolute masterpiece and all that. I'm like, am I taking crazy pills? And you know what I think what happened? I feel the opinion of Prey got changed because of Moon Crash, the DLC. That became kind of like the template of what ended up being Deathloop later on. Because people live and die by the DLC, which is Moon Crash. So I feel their discourse around Prey. Yes. People say that because it's like a more complete version of what ended up being Deathloop. It's kind of like Deathloop, but now with the illusion of choice. It's still like a constant repeating self thing that actually feels like fully complete. That's what I've been told. I haven't played Moon Crash, but people really live and die by Moon Crash. I have it. It's like you should be able to access it
I know
if you
I
don't.
saw your post where you were like, play Moon Crash, which
Mm-hmm.
we have the
Mm-hmm.
deluxe edition, so that comes with Moon Crash, but you
Mm-hmm.
also have it separately.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, funny you bring up Deathloop because I was in the middle of playing this game and really I'm giving it my all. I am pushing myself, and then I got to this one point
Mm-hmm.
where you enter a room and it is a hallway where there's nowhere to dodge or
Mm-hmm.
hide, and an enemy at the end of it that sees you and fires a yellow bolt right into your face.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to lower the difficulty, and I went in this moment. I was like, I think I want to just go play Deathloop.
Yeah. Deathloop is more of a that's the thing. Like Prey looks like a shooter, seems like you can play it as a shooter. It's not a shooter. It's an immersive sim. It's like shooting is just an element. Playing it just
Right.
as a shooter sucks.
But I also still feel like the damage you do is horrible. And like there's so much requirement to the stealth element of it, but you don't have the tools really needed to enjoy the stealth. Like think about Dishonored, because
Mm-hmm.
of course we're going to compare it to Dishonored. Um, where even at the start, without your powers, it feels like the game is built more around you being able to move around, to do platforming, verticality, and all of that stuff. Prey, I mean, they give you a little bit of the tools from the element of
Mm-hmm.
here's the glue thing, use it, get creative, and like yeah, you can like make steps onto certain platforms, but that also makes noise. That also is difficult to set up your positioning just right, as opposed to like them taking the time to make more verticality out of the
Mm-hmm.
environments. So if they want you to like stealth, they should make that more of an option with more of these tunnels. I mean, you think about how many vents they had in Dishonored
Mm-hmm.
to let
A
you move
lot of
around,
them.
how many of those pipes they had that you can go through those areas. And like then even just giving you blink from the start, right near the start of the game, as long as you accepted the outsider's offering,
Mm-hmm.
you then that was it. Like you had so much traversal out of that, and it makes me feel like if like they wanted to do this whole thing where it's like, no, it's not a shooter, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, please give me more tools that are not a wrench and a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, like work with me here. If you're telling me not to engage in all of this, it's the same situation that I'm keep getting into for the Deus Ex and the
Mm-hmm.
Metal Gear Solid problems. You're
Yeah.
giving me all of these tools to funnel me into a certain way, and then you punish me
For using
for
them.
doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, ooh, that burns me up.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
just so
yeah,
you don't know that is you're taking crazy pills. Guess what the Metacritic score is of this game?
let's say like 83.
79 on PS4
All
and
right. Yeah.
82 on Xbox, and I no, it's 79 on PS4 because it has 76 reviews,
Right.
82 on PC, and 84 on Xbox, but on Xbox because it had 23 critic reviews.
Right.
So it's
But
like
they also had the upgrades for the frame rate,
mhm.
which
Yeah,
would
but
make
Xbox
sense.
One, this was reviews back in 2017. So here's
Okay, got it.
here's what like it always hits the rub for me. It's like people call this game a masterpiece nowadays, but the reviews didn't reflect that back then. It's kind of what I told you. Let me see what did Prey Moon Crash. What did it? Yeah, and Moon Crash has a 75. So
Jeez.
so so it's really interesting. Like and actually at 83 actually on PS4. So it actually has like a higher reviews than the like the base game. That I feel
Interesting.
like there's like a weird perception about like, how people like talking about this game nowadays that it's not like reflected with what it was like told about. So that's why I've always had like very complicated feelings about like the unanimous love that I always see of Prey like these like around these days. But hearing your experience, I'm like, that sounds similar to like what I played back in 2018 when I really played through this game. It's like it's not bad. There's really cool elements, but it's very inconsistent. It has an inconsistency and doesn't have the elegance of Dishonored for me, like as like an immersive sim. So, but maybe are we playing it wrong? Maybe did these people play it wrong, and there's something about these people that unanimously praise it.
With this one, I very specifically tried
Mm-hmm.
so hard to like play in the way that they wanted us to play.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was so adamant that I was like, I am going to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what they want me to do, and I'm going to play it like that. I was trying to avoid the fights, trying to sneak around, but like how many times just in like the opening few hours that I had to backtrack
Mm-hmm.
through an area that either like, hey, there's this electric thing that will instantly kill you.
Mm-hmm.
There's also these robots that will zip up to you and then like fly in these weird angles and they'll flamethrower your face. And all of the little mimics on top of it, and then the weird phantom things that just grenade launcher you with their psychic beams. It was just so weirdly like one-sided, and how quickly they spot you for things. It's like for how much they needed me to get through a certain area, it just didn't feel right
Mm-hmm.
how one-sided all of that felt. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, just weird balancing on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm gonna sit with it the best, but I'm gonna
See if you
occasionally.
finish it. Let's see. Let's see. Obviously, people will not know for a while after this episode because we don't know when we'll have you back.
True.
But sit with it, and I want to hear like how it ends up sitting with you,
Mhm.
like near the end, because I want you to get to that final part, like to see like what to see what I was telling you. But and then the final game, Paul, that you were playing here is one that because of the account sharing that I shared you with my PlayStation, you're finally able to like download it, which is
Yeah,
Transformers: Fall of Cybertron, the sequel to War for Cybertron. That
I
telling me why didn't you play it? Why you thought about it? And like you're playing it now and
yep.
you're eating a
I'm
massive
gonna
amount of crow.
I'm gonna tell the story,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna give it the flowers that it deserves. So, give me the year that War for Cybertron came out.
2010.
Thank you. So 2010 happened, and I got War for Cybertron. Let me think. That's the year before I graduated high school. So I
Mm-hmm.
was in the middle of doing football, which was like a full-time job
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I got War for Cybertron probably at GameStop, probably pre-owned or something, and I was like, this is a really fun game actually. And it was
Mm-hmm.
one of the examples of a game that had a tacked on multiplayer mode, but it was actually really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think you had three choices or like three different areas where it was Bumblebee, Optimus Prime,
Mm-hmm.
like
It's
Ironside or something,
I don't
Sideswipe.
remember. Yeah, I don't remember
And
who
then
was
you
the
had
third one. Yeah.
Megatron,
Mm-hmm.
Starscream, and like maybe Soundwave or something. I can't
Soundwave. Yeah, for that one I
remember.
remember
Okay.
it was Soundwave. Yeah.
So it was cool because you had like you could pick either the Decepticons or the Autobots, and the first half of it was like the Decepticons, how they won, how they got to this point. You just crushed all the Autobots, and then the second half of that was Optimus Prime's crew coming in and just clearing house. It was a really fun third-person shooter. The transforming, the guns, just like the world building around Cybertron was really awesome. And then at the end, they kind of win, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but then I
Mm-hmm.
remember back when what is the year that Fall of Cybertron came out? That was like
2012.
12. Yeah,
2012. Yeah.
thank you.
I literally had just gotten to college when that game came out.
Yeah,
So.
so I was in college. I had my job at GameStop, but also I was just like busier, I guess, and I was
Mm-hmm.
getting I don't remember when it came out, but I feel like the reason I didn't get it was because something else came out that I also wanted.
Yeah. To me, like for full transparency, I couldn't get it because my first month at college I didn't have a console. I left it all behind. So
Man.
this game came out, and I was like, "Oh man, it's getting great reviews. I'm hearing all this stuff. I can't play it right now because it's like I don't have access to it." And I actually played it when they released the PS4 and Xbox One version in 2016. I was like, "Oh, I get to play them now," and that's when I played it. But continue.
So I that was a point where I was on my third 360 because they kept melting.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course the Red Ring of Death situation. One of the reasons was actually playing Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen on the 360.
Oh,
It green
that
and
that
redded
piece of
on me.
crap.
It was I was trying to play that game and it literally destroyed my console. So maybe there was a little bit of like Transformers fear out of that, but
Mm-hmm.
more accurately, it was because I saw the gameplay of Fall of Cybertron and I thought, okay, I kind of get it. I've seen this. I saw it already. I'm admittedly a little bored with the metal everything environments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I'm good. I'll just go play something else instead. and just of course like not really knowing at all what happens in the game, not knowing how much more they really doubled up on their
Mm-hmm.
amazing production quality. Like I knew it looked great, but I was like, okay, it's probably just more of the same
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't really do a whole lot to differentiate it from
Also,
my understanding of
I'll say
work.
that the marketing for Fall of Cybertron was weaker than when they did for War for Cybertron, so that wasn't properly conveyed around that time because
But
they
it's
were
funny
geared.
that like I worked at a place that was showing previews of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there was a playable demo at one of the
Yeah,
consoles we had, and I was
the,
just
the
like,
demo is the Bumblebee moment at the
right,
beginning. Yeah.
right at the beginning, where it's funny because everybody memes on it now because they're like, yeah, technically that's a war crime because they surrendered and then they shot them,
Mm-hmm.
because the war crimes on the Autobot side don't count, you know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
But
and
anyway,
yeah, and one of the things that for well, Fall of Cybertron was kind of like a quote unquote step back from the previous one is that the campaign was no longer co-op because it's like in War for Cybertron you're always with like three with the three either Decepticons or the Autobots, and you pick one of the three. In the like Fall for Cybertron like eliminated that because it made the levels more scripted. They had more like set pieces. They had like specific gameplay elements that were just like for specific characters. So they eliminated the co-op to make like oh yeah, now you're playing as one of the Dinobots in this. So it's a bigger area where you're gonna become like the big dinosaur. There's other levels where you play as Starscream or one of the like flying flying Transformers, and then you go through like levels that are like wide open and fly, and you're going up and down and all that, and they made kind of like that concession for like gameplay variety. So, but you don't get to choose who you play. Like the game now determines who you play.
right, which is interesting because you have access to the same weapons,
Mm-hmm.
but your stats are very clearly different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it surprises me in the like going from Optimus Prime, which is a crazy amazing
Mm-hmm.
set piece where you get
Megatron.
metro something. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um, just that whole segment where you're calling in artillery strikes, you're just blowing stuff up, you're ripping through dudes as Optimus Prime, and then you go into this like cliff jumper who is
Mm-hmm.
just he's literally a Bumblebee reskin.
Mm-hmm.
I looked very carefully. I was like, he's even got the little horns and everything. He's just red instead of
Mm-hmm.
yellow. And so I thought that was really weird. And I'm almost positive he's voiced by Troy Baker. Um, so that was just like a weird situation there. But also, like, his whole thing is cloaking and like not wanting to get into main fights. So I was like, this is a very weird change for this game.
It's
And
Jazz. It's
they
Jazz. You're playing as Jazz,
no, no,
and
no.
yes.
Jazz is after you play as Cliff
Oh,
Jumper. That
okay.
is another section.
Yeah.
Um,
Troy Baker voices Jazz.
that is very interesting.
Uh
Anyway,
huh.
um, so yeah, so there's a whole thing where like he does the cloaking nonsense and all of that, but it's just it felt weird and like this sudden like slamming of the brakes all of a sudden in the momentum because you're investigating something.
So Troy Baker actually voices three characters: Jazz, Jetfire, and Kickback.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna look something up for later, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it was interesting, but they also did the Metroid Dread process,
Mm-hmm.
like a decade before that game, because you have like these weird metallic things that are really hard to fight, and they do the little green scanning, and they can see through your cloaking, and they chase you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like it was kind of it went on a little longer than I expected or cared for, but then randomly they were like, "Oh, now this time you have to fight them,"
Mm-hmm.
and I was not clear on that until like the first three times I was trying to do the objective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was weird, but anyway, I'm enjoying it, and I love just destroying the Transformers in various ways because whenever you kill them, they just fall to pieces. It's very fun, very Lego.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna keep rocking through that game.
Yeah,
Looking forward to
dude,
it.
you've seen my library of games, right? Like
Yep.
the ones that I have bought and all that. You have such a treasure trove there. Keep looking to see like things that I have told you many times. That you're like, oh man, I missed that. I wish I had it. Now you have them. Look
Yep.
through it. Look through all of that to see if you find if you find more interesting games that you can play. like during this period?
Yeah, I was really glad that I could find a lot of those. I went through all of them at the time. That was all it was.
Hmm.
Um, Nolan North voice Cliff Jumper. That's
Okay,
why it
that's what it
sounded
was.
familiar. So we get literally a mission around Nolan North and Troy Baker
Yeah.
acting together
Yes.
in 2010.
Yeah, in
Of course
2012.
we do.
2012. Yeah.
2012. Thank you. My goodness, I can't believe that happened. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So that's all I've been playing really, but it's with its ups and downs, but at the same time, I'm enjoying the heck out of it and looking forward to playing more of it if I don't jump into something else.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing like what you think of when you finish Fall of Cybertron and also Prey 2017, because it's like the ending of Fall of Cybertron is super cool. The ending of Prey 2017 is really weird, and I can't wait to see to hear where you land on those.
Yep. Look,
All right, Paul, that was everything that we have been playing. So before we talk about what we want to celebrate, this being our 150th episode, we have a few headlines that we kind of really need to read because it's like, of course, these things would happen. Like, it cannot just be like a quiet time for us. So press X.
for some news.
So instead of just doing like the big news, we're doing them as headlines this time. So, but I also definitely want to talk about it. Before I dive into that, Paul, like last week, because we recorded early, the day after we recorded it again, like the huge thing happened, like the layoffs over at Microsoft where they closed a bunch of studios, and the announcement of the Switch 2. I cut into the episode like after the fact to kind of like record like a pickup to talk about that. But now that we've kind of removed, like, what were your thoughts when you read about like Xbox closing those 4 studios? Especially because obviously you were playing Prey as a result of one of those studios dying. It's
I don't get frustrated the way you do at most things, but that news really rubbed me the wrong way. Because man, like especially now looking back, they have that documentary for Psychonauts 2. Where
Oh, you're saying that, right? Where
Yep.
Matt Booty's like talking to the team.
Oh gosh, it's so rough to watch their faces and like everyone's like, we can't say anything about this and we have no power, and just the power of leadership to be able to miss what is really needed because it is not the most efficient use of people's time or energy, and therefore it is not worth uh, anybody's time. And vice versa, all of the worst parts of any business are what all of the business type people love to force everyone into. I'm in a very personal position where I am livid at the attitude of business type people and their love of feeling so self-important that they are willing to trample anything that is remotely creative for the sake of creativity because they need to efficiency-ize everything.
The graph to keep going up.
The graph needs the bottom line, the whatever it is, and I think I tapped into it when I was in college because I did business administration instead of something that I was actually passionate about because, quote, there's no future or pay in that field. And unfortunately, the fact that they seem to be getting proven right because they are rigging the freaking machine to fail for all of us. I mean, you look back at like the way artists were and how they could make a living just by selling paintings or being on retainer for somebody in like the society or whatever. And now it's like you just have to latch on and hope to God that you can make something kind of okay before you get fired. And that it actually comes out so that you can show it to people and use it as experience. So yeah, that's going to be me getting off my soapbox now, but I'm so pissed off at Xbox for doing this. The weird perspective shift to Microsoft gaming rather than Xbox.
Yeah.
It's just a weird situation entirely.
Yeah. someone made the point that the Microsoft gaming thing was kind of sort of announced around the time that they announced the ABK deal back in 2022. That I kind of like reminded people that it happened the day after we recorded our most anticipated games that Monday, and I literally said that week. I was like, okay, we're recording early. We're talking about we're talking about the games that we're most anticipating. Hopefully, it's still a quiet time and nothing big will happen. And then that happened, and it's so funny, like tracing back to that specific flashpoint in time, and them pursuing this deal. It's like what led to a lot of the things that they have purchased before now feeling in danger because they acquired ABK. Now their profits like rose up where they were, like in earnings. But then like the investors were like, huh, interesting. The graph had been going down. Why is it suddenly up? Oh, was it really the ABK deal? Was it really Call of Duty? Okay. How can we make the rest of that business rise up to the expectations of something that cannot be met? And because now the money people is like on top of them, because the Eye of Sauron is going to overlook now a division of Xbox that spent $100 billion in acquisitions over the last 5 years. Since they started acquiring like Ninja Theory, Double Fine, Compulsion Games, Playground Games, Obsidian, In Exile, Bethesda, and now ABK. That now is like all that idea of like, no, we're acquiring all this content because our focus is Game Pass. Game Pass is going to be this like all-encompassing service where what we want is that the big games to exist next to the creative stuff that a lot of the studios that we're acquiring are able to do, because sales are not gonna matter, because it's like what we want them is for content that can be there so they can have the freedom to do something creative. And that's kind of what and no bigger example of the creativity of that, like them like allowing Hi-Fi Rush, a game that they were concepting years before the acquisition, to finally happen. And oh yeah, last year they tell us, oh yeah, Hi-Fi Rush in its surprise release was a key success in all metrics. Yeah, a year later it's closed. So, were you bullshitting us? Were you your acquisition of Activision Blizzard now has transformed you into the thing of like, you acquiring that company means that you're transforming in that company? Because the big problem with Activision Blizzard was that they couldn't do anything else. Like they would like sometimes deviate. Hey, let's do Crash 4. Hey, let's do Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Like we make enough money. We can do other stuff other than just Call of Duty. But the investors always is like, no, we want the graph to keep going because Call of Duty makes us all that money. And then everything that they end up doing is always changing to kind of like appease the thing that gives them the most money. And now it's very clear that Xbox is turning into Activision because of that. Because it's kind of like when they were mentioning that, the thing that pisses me more, like, it's so funny because this happened the day after I recorded the pickup and I had posted the episode. Remember that night where I kept like posting like the Wednesday night? I was like, I think I'm gonna turn into the Joker with these things that are coming out. Like Matt Booty apparently saying that their objective is that no, we need smaller games that are gonna give us more prestige. After they closed Tango, that gave them a small game, their best
day.
Yeah. The little day after, gave them their highest rated exclusive over the last 10 years that Xbox has not had outside of Forza. And Forza no one cares because it's a racing game. That thing can get all prestige, but it's like that's people nudge their noses at the fact that it's like a highly rated racing game. They hadn't had a game of quality that has been like praised like Hi-Fi Rush was. A game for people to remember. Won more awards than Spider-Man 2. Think about that.
Yep.
And
I think about it way too often. That's my problem.
Yeah, and I've been loving the shade of the employees.
Oh yeah.
Posting pictures of the rewards, being like, "This not enough? This wasn't enough for you?" It's like, it's just kind of like insane that Microsoft is just an absolute shit show of a company that we have given. How many times have we given them so much rope? Now, next year will be the year they'll finally get there. Oh, finally, we know their lineup. There's something that's like, it's just been the coach that keeps promising that the better season every fucking year. And I feel this was the moment where like this was the moment the stroke broke the camel back at this moment. Because it was like, you had your, like, obviously 2022, a complete disaster for them. It had no games. Like, we remember when that was the year that Starfield and Redfall got delayed. It was like, how could you let that happen? Go an entire year with literally no game. How are you so badly mismanaged? Then 2023. Oh, cool. Hi-Fi Rush. Great. Great. So great. Like, they finally had like a quality game. They shadow dropped. They're in a good position. Then Redfall happened. A complete disaster. Then Starfield. They promised the space in promises. And what did it end up being? A disappointment. I like elements of it. You revisited last week, but it's like, that was not the game of the generation that a lot of people were hoping it was going to be from the creators of Skyrim. Forza Motorsport finally like comes back. They rebooted Forza Motorsport. Comes in incomplete. And that was the entire, that was your lineup that entire year. We start this year. They only somehow had Palworld and then had nothing for the rest of the year until next week when they get Hellblade Senua's, like Senua's Saga. Or Senua's Sacrifice. I don't remember. Like, it's just Hellblade 2. It's like, I cannot believe like they have PR'd their way into having everyone try to give them so many freaking chances, when then you have Nintendo literally schooling them in every metric possible and show them what competence really feels like. The Xbox brand is an absolute shambles, and it's like I no longer believe anything they say. I don't believe in their quality. Like, I'm seriously reconsidering like even giving airtime or wasting my Sunday watching their showcase live, because how many times have we been like sold a bill of goods now? Like, Game Pass has been cool. There's now doubts that Call of Duty may not even be in the service. Apparently that was like reiterated that maybe it will, but it's like they haven't even made it clear now. It's like, how don't you not know? Like, how are they letting such fucking incompetent people at the top keep their jobs and getting promotions? It's insane.
I think I'm making a connection finally.
Yeah.
Not just in the world of video games, but this issue where a company gets so huge and it starts stumbling over itself, because I don't think the human brain can possibly manage that much information at all.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even at the best use of efficiency, where you have like the main guy who oversees the next guy who oversees the next guy, there's so much to manage within each of those spaces along the triangle that you still have to kind of understand what each person is doing to be able to best actually manage everybody. And you just physically can't.
Mm-hmm.
There's way too much. That's why so many IPs are getting unused, and not just video games, but everything, because nobody can remember everything that this company owns.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into this situation where you're working for this company, you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing, because nobody knows what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then eventually you're a number on the board that you say, well, we need to cut costs. They cut the costs, and then the process restarts, because nobody, it's the was it the ship of Theseus or something?
Ship of Theseus, yeah.
It's that exact situation, except it's information that the company requires gets lost with each person that gets replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you have the situation where only the person that's been there for 10 years are the board of directors, and they have no idea what's going on anymore, because they haven't been part of the actual workforce. So therefore everyone goes around going, I don't really know what's going on anymore. Yeah. And we keep like putting in new initiatives and trying things and doing things, and everything else that works just keeps chugging along, making its money. But we're at this real breaking point that I think one day the money's going to run out in these big companies.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the best case scenario is that there's so many other different smaller companies that can manage their little portion. Yeah. And I know everybody's been saying that for a while, but I feel like this is a new angle on it, where it's like, there's not enough ability to manage a company that big.
Yes, and also that, as I think about it like this, Paul, is that this was the company heading into the Xbox Series X launch, already had 13 studios, and launched the console with not a single first-party game. A single one. Because they were banking on Halo, and that was so mismanaged that it missed for an entire year. Since then, they acquired Bethesda and ABK, and the same people that were manning the ship when they launched their latest console with nothing now are in charge of managing all of this. It is insane. Like, Does Matt Booty and Phil Spencer have like Satya Nadella's like black book or something? Like they know the secrets that they're like extorting him into like keeping them in positions of power? Because I do not understand how these people remain in power when they've been so incompetent in the things that matter in gaming, which is games. And nothing is more like incompetent than you like closing the studio that finally gave you some respect in games. It's like, it's just so insane. And this is why like more mad respect than Nintendo, that they went through the entire generation with only one acquisition. Only one. Of a studio that already was working with them for so long. That they just basically formalized what they had already been doing. And they're like the most successful like system ever. They had recently announced 141 million Switches sold. They have such power that they could announce that their next system is confirmed through a tweet. And that's all they needed. Like, Sony not doing great either. Let's just call it how it is. Like, we don't know like what they're working on, but Sony at the very least has learned like they're being rewarded for their silence. Microsoft talked so much that they were caught in their hypocrisy. It was like their receipts were brutal for Microsoft. They wanted to be like such an open-faced company, but it's like these people are so incompetent. We're the ones saying this stuff, and now we even have video proof of that in the Double Fine documentary. This is the same guy that literally after the day after they closed Tango, we're like, we need smaller games that gives us more prestige. How is this guy could still have a job? It's just utter insanity. I've now reached the point with Xbox that I do not believe anything that they put out is gonna be like a Game of the Year contender or something that's gonna move the needle. I was excited about Hellblade 2. The way they're not marketing that game, I believe when that game comes out, it's gonna be in the 7s and the 8s, and it's just not gonna move any needle. It's just gonna be more catastrophe. Like, I've never seen anyone try to give them this much rope, and it's just the amount of copium that has come out of the Xbox ecosystem. How many people are still like trying to give benefit of the doubt has just been utter insanity. How I see it right now is that even though I bought a Series X, it's like I'm just gonna run as much as we can, Paul, with what they keep like giving us for free with Game Pass, because it's still technically cheap for us. So it's more like I'm just gonna keep extracting with no hope, because there is no hope in that ecosystem now. And let's hope that Sony now, like, because there's rumors that there's a showcase soon. It's like Sony has not been kind of like in good graces either in the Jim Ryan era. It's like they have carte blanche to just like come and stab Xbox in the back now.
And so, I think one of our headlines is probably going to mention the third member of that pyramid and how they are just unbothered by everything going on right now.
Oh yeah, oh yes, exactly. So now we move into like some of those headlines, Paul, because today, of course, just like episode 50, we recorded it the day that we got big Square Enix news. Of course, our episode 150, the same thing happens. Square Enix finally had their financial results for the last fiscal year quarter, and to put it bluntly, they missed their profit margin by 70% over this past year. That's utter insanity that they missed by that much, but there's many factors for why that was happening. But some of these headlines about like about what came from that thing, because otherwise we'll be here for like an hour parsing through that. Kind of like some of the big things that come from that are like headline number 1: Square Enix will aggressively pursue multi-platform strategy in company reboot. The other headline is that Square Enix confirms its canceled games which don't fit with its new development strategy, which I kind of briefly talked about in the Soul episode 2 weeks ago. And they also confirmed that US and EU layoffs are part of their restructuring, so they're gonna be laying off part of their comms team that are like in the US and EU as they kind of restructure their company. But the first headline about them pursuing a multi-platform strategy is because over this past year, I show you a picture when we were having that discussion with Sebastian, because he caught wind of what had been happening and how they're like moving away from exclusivity. Is that this past year, like with the games that they've sold well, but the yen, their main currency of where the main studio company lives, has been very weak. Development costs are still ballooning, like throughout not just one product, but many of their products. Just think about that. In the same fiscal year, they had to account for the massive budget of Final Fantasy 16 and the moderate budget of Rebirth, based on how long those games cost. But it's all like put together in one, and then all these games that they shit out, and then on top of that is like them can their MMO Final Fantasy 14, it has not been seeing growth because no new content has come out of that game in 3 years. They're finally getting new content in June with Dawn Trail. They put the game on Xbox. That didn't move the needle. And also we know that that port was bungled by Xbox themselves. And remember the bans over like in-game terms being banned by people putting in like in the text chat. Which is utter insanity. Them canceling mobile games that were meant to be whales that was gonna like feed them, and then they canceled a ton of AAA games that were unannounced, and they wrote that also. That ate at their profits, so that the games that they sold, two of which were exclusive that did well, but kind of like got offset and put themselves in a hole that now they have to pursue a multi-platform strategy because they gotta get out of that for the next 3 years over like their decisions of realigning expectations. So when they mention multi-platform strategy, obviously it's PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and new Nintendo systems, which is basically them admitting that Japan, which is a territory that they absolutely need their games to sell more because it's local, is their actual coin that will give them like that they will allow them to reap those benefits without like exchange rates. Japan moved away from PlayStation. That system's not selling over there because Japan loves portables. The Switch is doing humongous over there in Japan. We have rumors now that the Switch 2 is gonna have PS4 Pro / Xbox Series S specs. For a handheld, that's
dang.
Yeah. And them doing DLSS to kind of like upscale things, which is kind of like those strategies that make things look better than they actually are because it's all strategic technology. It's like they're basically setting the Switch 2 now for third parties to feel confident in putting their stuff there. And that's going to be huge. Like I tell you, like with a multi-platform strategy, if Remake and Rebirth make it to the Switch 2 and launches in Japan, that thing will sell gangbusters.
Oh my goodness.
Imagine like a game of that quality. Think about it. Like picture like Rebirth. How immense of the scale and how impressive that game is, and how much they were able to do at that. Imagine running it in a handheld like a Switch 2, and that playing in a territory. It's like
I can't even begin to process just the fact that you can take that portable, much less the fact that you're going to be able to have that on like a Japanese console that seems the Japanese crowd actually enjoy, because as we've learned, they don't really like the PS5 that much for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why, but
it's too big. It's like they have a really big problem with something that is so huge because the
oh,
apartments
okay, yeah,
the apartments over there are like so tiny. So there's like it's just
is
not
that
compatible.
really like? I mean, I get it because like the culture over there is like super like you use every inch of what you can very specifically, and I respect the hell out of it. But
and
also,
because there's living spaces are so tiny, a lot of
Right.
Japanese people are always outside. You see them, a lot of them playing handheld stuff like in bus trains and like in parks and all that. It's like part of the culture to game while you're outside. It's not it's not looked down upon. It's like that's fully embraced.
right.
So that's why the Switch has done so well for them. So
Well, anyway, I just
yeah,
I hope that this does well for Nintendo of all things. And
I think it
hope
will.
that-
Yeah, I think it will because they're not like rocking the boat. From what we heard, like Nintendo's always a company that love rocking the boat from system to system. This time they're playing it conservatively. It's like we had a great thing with the Switch. Let's keep doing that, but let's give them more power. And we have the brand recognition, and we're the only ones that have increased our development pipelines. We have more people in this time. Remember the picture I sent you? Like from year on year, they had more. Like in this year of layoffs, they have had none, and they transformed the majority of their QA people into in-house QA people. Their budgets are like in control. They know like how to properly think, and then they like Nintendo's like a company to really like look highly upon, even with their shitty business practices.
because I don't want to give them unnecessary flowers. It's just kind of like all right, good job. I'm gonna give you a little clap there, for knowing how to run a business, but also, like they still do really crappy stuff all the time.
Yeah.
They're shutting down emulators and things like that.
Oh yes, and then like having putting a guy like in a life sentence to perpetually like pay them for like
Oh my
something.
gosh, that's horrible. Like,
Yeah,
come on, guys, y'all got so much money.
yeah, but it's like you don't ever want to be like in the ire of their lawyers, and yeah, the Switch 2 is just gonna be so huge for now. It's like it's gonna be like I can't wait for that to finally happen for us to see the new device and what they have. And I tell you, it's like why they will get away with so much stuff. Do you remember the thing that I posted yesterday about the Breath of the Wild port? That apparently is rumored that they will re-release Breath of the Wild on the new system with higher fidelity and all of that. Watch that thing sell gangbusters, and
much.
people are not gonna nudge their nose like they did when like Sony did a remake of The Last of Us, or like they will get away with it because they have that much clout. Like mark my words, and I will be weak, and I tell you, if I see that thing like at a high resolution, especially with that art style and running at 60 frames, and with like I'll also be weak and buy it. So yeah, it's like because that's just where they are, and it just feels like Nintendo is like the one out of the three that play their cards right in this like downturn, and they're like reaping the benefits. Now Square Enix is gonna tap into that. It's like I tell you, like Square Enix like committing to PlayStation exclusivity. It's so weird around this time because like none of the other Japanese third parties did that. Capcom hasn't done an exclusive for anyone in like years, since the GameCube. Like Bandai Namco neither. So it's like they thought the money that Sony was pouring into the exclusivity was gonna be enough, but look at their numbers. It's like that's not gonna happen again. And I feel more a lot of those games need more like exposure. I feel like more people needed to play 16. More people needed to play Reaver. Those games are so good. So I can't wait to see like how they move. And so sad that now like Square Enix, they didn't have layups, and now they're gonna have layups. But in this case, Paul, they're not doing incredibly well. This is a case where shit, their profits are like down, and all because they shitted out so many games. Remember we were talking about like why did they put out a lot of that? Apparently they're like realigning that they're not gonna do that again because it's like they don't have enough time to market. They don't have enough time to give everything like its proper space. And marketing dollars are always gonna go for like their big tentpoles, and their tentpoles gave them ups, but because of everything else, it's like that was not enough. So it's not like those exclusives failed. It's just they were just not enough to offset like everything else that brought them down. So that'll be very interesting to see where they move forward and how 14 does this June with Dawn Trail. So then other headline, Paul, Red Dead 1 apparently based on a data mine is finally coming to PC. That first game is somehow has eluded the PC platform all this time. The sequel eventually made it, but the first like that first game was like never just was a so funny. It's like it just eluded the PC, and only through weird emulation you could play on PC. So finally people are gonna see the greatness of the first Red Dead, which by the way I did buy Red Dead Redemption Remastered on PS5. You can play it on my account. It was cheap.
I don't know if I have it in my soul to go back to that, because that's one of those games where it used to be my favorite game of all time, and now I'm like, I don't know if this holds up anymore. Like it's finally had so much time pass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like the quality of life might be just enough lacking. That,
you should give the PS5 version a shot with like the higher frame rate, high resolution, and all that to see how you feel about that. But you have you have access to it now.
Maybe so.
Yeah. So, in unexpected, not surprising news, another headline: Warner Brothers Discovery boss David Zaslav calls Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's release disappointing, and they blame a loss of $200 million on the game.
I remember the quotes where it was just like, yeah, duh. Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. But it's like it's just so funny. Like Warner Bros. Discovery went from like one of their biggest successes ever with Hogwarts Legacy just a year ago, and in the same time period, a DC game in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League that no one wanted, that the Suicide Squad has no cachet, absolutely no cachet like in the mainstream, no matter how many subtitles you try to put in to be like, don't worry guys, the characters you love are here. You're just not gonna play with them. It's like if the great Suicide Squad movie by James Gunn didn't move the needle, this game was not gonna do that. And this game is okay. We enjoyed parts of it. I hated how it ended, and I've been hating how the live service element has been going. It's here's what's funny, Paul. Is like this week is the 6th week of the first episode. This was supposed to be the release of the second episode of the first season.
Was it really?
No news. Absolutely, of like
Nothing.
Yeah, and usually when you're doing seasonal stuff, you're constantly be like, okay, in this 6 weeks, okay, it's done. Now the next one should be like. That's how bad it's been for them. Like with them like blaming $200 million loss right now with Warner Bros. Discovery that has been like trying to get out of debt, writing off a bunch of stuff like they recently did with the Coyote versus Acme. Rocksteady's not gonna survive this. I really don't think they'll survive this game. Like I don't think they're gonna survive them getting through the planned 5 seasons of content that's supposed to bring the Justice League back that I told you about. Such a bummer to see. Such a bummer, but expected. Is like we have live service success in Helldivers 2, not doing fake MMOs. Suicide Squad is the complete opposite. The kind of live service that just doesn't work in 2024. So
that's so disappointing for Rocksteady because like they
wasted so much time.
I'm not gonna go back over it, but like just how we were just cheering for them and hoping that it was going to be something. It's like, all right, well, they picked a really dumb subject, but at least maybe we'll have something out of here. And
yeah, they had the pedigree. It was like, we don't like the idea, but their pedigree is so good with the Arkham games. Hopefully they can do something. And to be fair, from a moment-to-moment playability, they nailed it. Like the actual movement and shooting, the fidelity and all of that, they nailed it. Everything else around it, absolute garbage. The mission design, a story that was interesting. We were interested with that story as it was going along because the production was like so good, and then they had to like drop the ball so catastrophically hard with its non-ending because they wanted to set up this live service setup that we may not even see the light of day at the end. So if that game had not been a live service, Paul, we would have had a different conversation. Them making it a live service. That's why you get Warner Bros. And that's what you keep getting if you want to make all your games live service like you said you were going to do. So, they're going to keep like, oh man, it's like, let me tell you this, Paul, is like, what a year. Everything Japanese has been so great, and in the indie scene. Everything in the Western side has just been a catastrophe. If it wasn't for Japanese stuff and us liking a bunch of the Japanese stuff that we've been playing this year, I don't think we would have the rosy like colors that we have of 2024.
This year would not be the same at all. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I love that I love Japanese stuff because that's why I haven't felt the brunt of it until this month where I'm like, now that we passed through all this Japanese stuff, holy crap, what happened to Western development this year? It's been rough. And the final headline, Paul, for episode 150. Assassin's Creed Codename Red, the Japanese samurai Assassin's Creed everyone has been wanting for freaking forever, finally gets its official title, Assassin's Creed Shadow. A revealed trailer on May 15th, which is when the day after this episode posts, because we're recording early, people, again, because of reasons with pregnancies. And according to the leak, it's going to be out on November 15th, 2024. So they're going to have Star Wars Outlaws in August. Then 3 months later, the Assassin's Creed everyone has been wanting, but we basically have gotten it already with Ghost of Tsushima and Rise of the Ronin. So I am very, very, very curious how they do it, Paul. I can't wait to see how it looks. I can't wait to see like how they have evolved their formula, if they did, because this is their first new gen only Assassin's Creed game for like this consoles. Because Mirage from last year, I cannot believe it was last year. It feels like it was longer ago. That was still straddling the line. It was on the Valhalla engine. I enjoyed it. Hasn't stuck with me, but it was like enjoyable for what it was. I need to see like if they have how they're gonna differentiate it from Ghost of Tsushima that did what people have wanted out of them for so long. And even Rise of the Ronin, not as pretty, but had that feeling that it hit the feeling so right, and the combat was phenomenal. So, do you have any hope for Red?
I have a little
Shadow.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be the next project after Mirage, which was We said that that was like a pretty decent success to
Yeah,
them, right?
no, it was a massive success, like monetarily.
Because that was like super huge sales on that.
Hmm.
And do we remember how, or have they said how early before Mirage they started working on
They started
Shadow?
working concurrently, but apparently, I heard behind the scenes scuttle that some of the systems that they got emphasized in Mirage were gonna be retroactively added here, like the one-hit stealth kills.
Okay,
because
so
because this is still gonna be,
maybe.
and yeah, so this is still gonna be like this is being made by Quebec, the guys that made Odyssey. This is gonna go back to the RPG side of things, but they are gonna like allow one hit kills again that were have not been in the series in forever. Like Valhalla tried to like toy with that with like the upgrade tree that allow you to do, or you doing the accessibility option to allow one hit kills, and they said that now they want to make that super intrinsic because they want you being like the samurai or like the stealthy ninja to feel like a stealthy ninja in an Assassin's Creed game. So
So I think it's going to be two camps.
mhm,
There's the like the more casual crowd is just going to go, why can't I'm just going to go back and play Ghost of Tsushima or Rise of the Ronin. And they're going to just like start listing a lot of like samurai-esque
mhm,
games to go, just go play these instead.
mhm,
And then the other side is going to be that this game is going to live and die on its characters.
mhm,
I think,
yeah,
because Mirage was already a wet blanket in that side, but it
mhm,
had enough gameplay going for it to really kind of bring it out. But this
mhm,
being the next big step in the Assassin's Creed franchise,
yeah.
I think this is going to be, I don't even know if this is going to be like a continuation of
It is.
Homegirl.
It is.
Okay.
No,
So
it
if
is.
it is,
Here's
then,
the thing. Like, it's a continuation. That this is now the story after the Layla Hassan thing got ended in
right.
Valhalla. So this is kind of like the next chapter
But this
after
is going
the.
to be like people going back to like Kingdom Hearts 3 after playing Kingdom Hearts 2.
Mhm,
Because we had so much go down in like Valhalla
mhm,
and in all of the other stuff with Layla and all that, that they're going to be like, excuse me, what's happening now?
mhm. Yeah, this is like the new beginning, still continuing the story. So, and also, this is gonna be the first time we're gonna see them explain to us what Assassin's Creed Infinity is. That we learned back in 2021 when we were
Oh,
like
I
in the
forgot
early
about
episodes of this
Infinity.
show. So, kind of like how they want a hub, kind of like what Modern Warfare has become, like how this hub that houses like the different games. This is supposed to be the first one on that of those projects, because then the next project is Hex, the one about the witchcraft in the Holy Roman Empire
Yeah,
that they
that's right.
announced, and how they were saying that the Infinity Hub is gonna have different kinds of Assassin's Creed games, where you're gonna have your massive RPG one, you're gonna have your smaller one, and they're all kind of gonna feed together a meta narrative within Infinity. I need to see them because I was talking with Ains, my editor in chief for Season Gaming. He's going to go to the Summer Game Fest, and he's actually going to be at the Ubisoft Forward, their conference. They're doing another one there, and he also got invited to see behind closed doors this game. So I'm really want to see like how they play that pitch. I really want to see like how they embrace this being the new generation of Assassin's Creed, because Valhalla was still in the style of the late PS4 gen game. It was a late PS4 game that was also on PS5. Mirage was on that technology, so still not next gen. So this is gonna be our first look at what next gen Ubisoft will be, because Ubisoft has taken a long time to give us a next gen only thing.
Very
So,
long time.
and Outlaws is gonna be that too. So that's a solid lineup for them for this holiday. What, an early, we get our Star Wars game early in August, and now we get an Assassin's Creed game in November. We don't know what else is happening in November, so that's I feel that's a good slot for it. Where it's like, okay, we have nothing else. Is this good enough for like to take that holiday spot for us? We'll see. I'm very curious. I still have a soft spot for the Assassin's Creed franchise. I enjoyed what we played of Mirage. Obviously, I always saw that as their experiment of being like, could we find success with the old style? Could we like, do people still want this? Is it just noise? And kind of what I was telling Sebastian is like, it was. This game sold more than Spider-Man 2 and Mario Wonder in Europe. It was the third best-selling game in that month. It was the Assassin's Creed series like best-selling game since Origins. So there was hunger for the old style. So
Yeah.
I now have to see like if they take those lessons and put it in Shadow, which it was so funny. When Warrior 64 like tweeted the leak of the name, he put a subtitle like it really is the year of Shadow, because Sega is saying that 2024 is the year of Shadow the Hedgehog. So
Yep.
Assassin's Creed Shadow was so funny. It's so funny. So, and with that, Paul, that ends the news section. We didn't do like the full rundown. So, time to talk about what let's all celebrate. Wait, there's more, Paul. There are more headlines. So yeah, like always, how it happens every time that we record early, things can break,
Oh
and
yeah.
and then on top of that, we're recording a day late. Afterwards, obviously, you can see you change your clothes. I still have
Yep.
my same one. I don't have a beard anymore. But yeah, like today when we're like restarting this recording, we got news from the PlayStation camps. Just a couple of quick headlines from like their financials, because like their fiscal year was what the report came out today. Like one of the big ones, that now we have two new CEOs appointed over at PlayStation. So obviously we talked about last year, Jim Ryan stepped down and he left at the end of March 31st as CEO. We have said many times like what our thoughts have been over the PlayStation Jim Ryan era. Now Sony has quickly appointed the next CEO, because they had originally said that who was interim CEO was going to be interim for like a year. He literally lasted 2 months before he appointed someone, because he was also the company CFO, who was here Hiroki Totoki, who was the one that went around be like, yeah, the PlayStation studios are like, they're all great and all that, but they don't have a good eye for business. When they were like when they talked about Bungie specifically, so he's appointed now Herman Holst and Hideaki Nishino. So Herman Holst, you've seen him, like he's shown up in many PlayStation showcases. He's like the dude with like the brown hair that has like the very super cool voice. That loves wearing jackets, and he was the one that was next to Hideo Kojima when they announced the stealth game at the last State of Play. And he's also the one that founded Guerrilla Games. So now at the CEO level, we have a gamer again, like that, and that's like so exciting, because it's like he obviously was overseeing first party, but he was still reporting to Jim Ryan originally, and Jim Ryan was the one calling the shots. Oh yeah, we're moving to the live service area and all that. We're gonna just try to keep everything as it keep going, even though the budgets are increasing. And this time they're appointing a co-CEO in Hideaki Nishino, which I was kind of reading around. He has been like in charge of developing the software updates for like the PS5, like the Discord integration, the shared play, and doing some sort of like a third-party relations thing like within Japan. And now they're like empowering him to be like CEO while remaining in Japan. Which, why is that so exciting? We have been like talking that Sony had to like strayed away from his Japanese roots too hard into like the American side. And what made PlayStation exciting initially was the fact that it was a global company that you could get flavors from America, from Europe, and Japan. And Japan was where the quirkiness kind of came from. And when they closed Japan studio, it was like, man, they're moving away from Japan. That kind of sucks, because that's like that was the thing that differentiated them the most from the other things that they kept doing. And we talked about how the Japanese market this year has been the one that has been feeding us more than the Western market. The Western market has been kind of a disaster. So it's like Jim Ryan in his exit interviews, he had been mentioning that he found himself very tired, that his job constantly kept moving him from Europe to America and Japan like constantly. And because he was like a senile old man, that was like so tiring. And I can imagine, just imagine having to travel every month to three different sides of the world.
I can't lie.
Yeah.
I remember sympathizing and empathizing a little bit with that, because I was like, traveling sucks. So to have to
Mm-hmm.
do that so often would really wear me out. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame him there, but I can blame him in a lot of other areas.
Yes. Oh yes. Especially because like really, let's not remember, it's like the Jim Ryan era made the PlayStation brand so stilted, and the PS5 is like no rhyme or reason of when we were gonna get showcases. It was always a wonder. It's like, are they ever gonna talk? They're ever gonna say anything? It's like the PS5 has been like selling so much, which is the other headline quickly that I read, that it's like they just announced that this past year they sold 20.8 million units, which, just for context, they had like forecasted that they were gonna sell 25 million, which, for people that don't know, that's an insane number. No system, not even the Switch, has ever sold like about 20 million like in a fiscal year. It's usually like 15 or 18 has always been kind of like the high end at like a peak year, and they were trying to like sell 20 like 25 million, especially because the last fiscal year they sold 19 million. So, and that was when, around the time where they finally fixed their the supply problem, which I definitely can't wait to talk about that when we're gonna talk about later. Which is so funny remembering those that era. That is like once they finally figured their crap out with finally having PS5s widely available in a store, not just online, like at the mercy of bots. They were like, we have such high momentum, we're gonna sell 25 million units, and they only ended up selling 20.8. So it's like they missed, but they still sold more than the previous quarter. So they still broke records. That's still pretty wild. There's like reports that this last quarter Xbox only sold 800K. And this quarter, like quarter four, the PS5 moved 4.5 million units. It's absolutely insanity. Like how like what the balance is.
One-sided, it seems.
Yes, it sucks.
I know.
Yeah, it super sucks. Like I hate hearing that Xbox is like selling that low. But it's like that's just where the market is. Like
that's even before Xbox recently did all of their string of very bad decisions. I mean, this is what we've been talking about for 3 years now, kind of tying into what our whole situation is. Thinking about like all of the subjects we spent the most time talking about, and how much I didn't lose you, did I?
No.
Okay, good.
No,
it looked like you froze for a second. I
know. I was just looking at a text. Yeah. So just keep going. No.
Yeah, so it's like basically what we've been talking about over the last 3 years. It's either Xbox has a really good start or a really good opportunity for something, and then they squander it. And then Sony kind of walks into a couple of rakes themselves, and then Nintendo kind of minds their own business and then moves forward despite not really pushing the industry in a lot of technological ways outside of, the obvious ones of the portable system and everything like that, just kind of being more creative. Anyway. With the whole Xbox situation, they've been walking on rakes for a while now and buying their way out of situations. And oh my goodness, yeah, it really has been a decade now because that was 2014 when we had the whole debacle of
TV.
Yep. Was that 2013 or
2013 has been more than a decade.
That's what
now.
I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, I knew that came out in 2013. So yeah, it's just, oh my goodness, Xbox kind of runs all this stuff, and I went on my soapbox for a minute there yesterday, talking about the just people can't manage that companies that are that big after a while, and I think Xbox is certainly at that level at this point.
Yeah. And it's like it's just clear. It's like everyone is trying to pay the false equivalency that PlayStation is also struggling. I'm like, I look at these numbers, I'm like, how? Obviously, yes, their profit margins are lower because of ballooning development costs. That I do agree with. But everyone even remotely painting that the PlayStation is an ecosystem that is like going out to consumers is like struggling. Is like that's just copium and just trying to paint like really false. Kind of like really false comparisons just to try to justify Xbox screwing the pooch like they have been for so freaking long. And it's like they really like for Xbox that for people are two parties, and you and I thankfully we have always mentioned that we made on PlayStation because we built our library there last year, but we're open to playing everywhere. It's like for the people that are very partisan and are just so stuck in an ecosystem, it's like I would hope that Xbox would feel more like, at least a lot of Xbox fans would stop giving so much rope to their executive leadership, because it's like look at the financials. And obviously yes, Xbox like buying ABK helped them in the profit margin because they brought all the Activision like earnings them. The investors are smart to notice. It's like, oh yeah, that only happened because you bought that company. Everything else that you had, how's it been doing? Everything has been going down. This is not going down, this is going up. It just didn't go spherically up where it was. So it's like no wonder it's like why PlayStation tends to be very favored by many, because it's like that's a system that's just out there, and Xbox really needs to work on that, and it's looking likely that may never happen for them. That sucks. But I'm really now interested to hear, like, I want to hear the pitch for the direction now with Herman Hulst and Hideaki like now manning the ship during the kind of like the letter they put out for the investors. They mentioned that they're gonna deliver their vision like later this month. That basically confirms the PlayStation showcase. So, which last year when they did like the investors meeting, the showcase happened the day after. That was like kind of like May 25th, May 24th. So we might be getting a PlayStation showcase around that time. And you know what? If this finally gives us consistency of like, oh, the last week of May is when they talk, finally, thank you. We need like I hate not knowing that when we're gonna hear from them. That
Right.
happened under Jim Ryan. So,
I really hope we get some kind of consistency because
mhm,
people really downplay the importance and the power of consistency because
mhm,
it's not bombastic and it's not really like memorable. But
mhm,
when people can sit back and go, I know I'm going to hear something around this time, it really helps people go to bat for you.
mhm,
And even if you miss that, like if you're around that area, then people are far more likely to just kind of give you the benefit of the doubt on what
mhm.
you're going to do.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
feel like a consumer that at least has been taken care of because you're not being taken for granted, because it's like it's the company trying to like keep you engaged and excited for like, hey, here's what's gonna be for the next 6 months for you, or like within the next year. And it really is like Xbox has been failing at delivery, but they sure have been consistent. We know every June they're always gonna have a showcase, like without fail. And
they always show really cool stuff that gets us excited, and half
uh
of it comes out, and
and
half
then
of
we're
it.
like, yeah, we shrug at the end. We end up shrugging at the end. It's so funny looking at both at both extremes. But also, let's not forget, last year's PlayStation Showcase was a huge disappointment for many. A great collection of games, but a really bad showcase of like what's exclusive to or upcoming for PlayStation. That was like the big worry last year was like, crap, like you only really showcased Spider-Man, a game you had announced 2 years before, and nothing really new, like tangible, other than the two live service games for games and Concord. And they reiterated Concord, the game that they only showcased like a burger and a spaceship. That was like a nothing, like a nothing burger trailer.
Wow.
That's still coming out. That's still coming out this year, according to like their financials. Under like the live service that they want to launch for this year, they listed Destiny 2 the final ship, which is coming out in a few weeks, and that's kind of like their live service like launches for this year. So barrel's empty. The only announced PS5 games that we know are Wolverine and Death Stranding 2. Where's Sucker Punch? Where's Bend? Where's the Cory Barlog Sony Santa Monica game? Where's the Naughty Dog? Are they? Is it Last of Us 3 or the new IP? Because they mentioned they were working now on 2 games when they cancel factions. It's like now they got to talk. It's like last year they suffer like kind of like what the Nintendo Direct problem when the Nintendo Direct disappeared for like an entire year, and then they came back. Everyone was so disappointed in the comeback because they had been gone for so long and it wasn't like a banger. And the same thing happened with PlayStation. So I can't wait to see how they respond. And that is going to be the first showcase under fully Herman Holst and Hideaki Nishino. So crossing fingers that there's at least some excitement that comes out of the PlayStation camp, because it's like, yeah, they're doing really well, but it's like perception and reality are so weird in the PS camp. I tell you, it's like you see these numbers like they're doing fantastically, but sometimes it feels very doom and gloom because what are they even doing? So, and that was the Jim Ryan curse. But now, Paul, we move away from news headlines. If for some reason before the posting of this episode something breaks, I'm gonna cut in, and this is where I would cut in to just cover my bases.
Well,
But
let's see what it is.
yes, but now, Paul, because we mentioned this was episode 150. I love doing milestone celebrations. It's kind of like a look back, but more importantly, this one I want to do the look back because you're going away for like 3 months because of
Yep.
paternity leave. So I think this would be like a great time to like take stock of some of our favorite memories of us doing the show. And I'm looking at the list of oral episodes going all the way back to the very first one on May 4th, 2021. After like I don't know, do you remember what reignited us to want to do the show again? I'm turning. Let me see if
Let's kind of go back.
mhm.
So
We
we
took
had
a
our
break. Yeah, we had our
2020.
2020. Mm-hmm.
We had like January to March-ish, I
Yeah,
think. We
yeah,
only did
we
a
were.
couple of months.
Yeah.
We decided that that was just not happening. What was
Mm-hmm.
happening in 2021? No, 2020 obviously
Mm-hmm.
was the
Pandemic.
pandemic, and there's a lot of craziness going on. I was getting ready to get married by
Mm-hmm.
the end of that year. Had a lot of changes in life, and my job was really crazy. So there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff that was kind of contributing to no, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to sit down for 2 hours
Yeah,
and talk
yeah.
about things.
We did 10 episodes in a row, like
Yep.
from January, like the first week of January all the way to the lockdowns. And
We
then
also
from
had a terrible recording schedule.
yes, oh yes, remember because remember that we
That
used to
was
record like at
draining.
close to midnight.
Oh yeah.
Like it was
We
bad.
could not figure that out to
Hmm.
save our lives because it was like one of us was available later on in the day,
Hmm.
one of us was available in the morning. And for my job, there was no consistency
Hmm.
whatsoever. If I was needed, I was just dropping everything and running out to the worst parts of New Orleans. So
Hmm.
there
Yeah.
was not a lot of fun to be had in that situation. But after a while, I think it started to because we stayed in contact. That was like the big thing for us.
Yes, and we would
Um,
never stop talking. Like that's what
right.
was funny. Ever since like I met you in 2019, when it was statics, when that was kind of like the idea of like the previous idea of what Escape was, kind of like this crossover company. I was gonna bring in different content creators to do the to kind of do their own thing, and that was like we threw that out into the wind without really having like a base. Like we had a podcast called the the Pop Culture Podcast by as a certain pair of brothers that have now like disappeared into the ether, and we're better off without them. Um, it was like how when we lost Pop Culture Podcast, our buddy PJ, who was like originally co-founder of the channel with me, we're like we had promoted that we're doing a podcast, and that just disappeared. So why don't we do our own? And that's where Statics Radio initially happened, because it was me, PJ, and Zach. Who Zach was the one that made the original art and like and also kind of give some of the initial names of what we ended up using. And Zach wasn't much of a podcaster. PJ and I kind of clashed on what we wanted that podcast to be, because PJ wanted the Statics Radio to be like a really random podcast, that we're gonna talk about random topics every week when we did it, and I wanted to talk about games.
Right.
So and then after like 5 episodes, we moved to like bi-weekly, so it was like every 2 weeks. Eventually I started like merging the conversation more towards gaming, but it was like harder doing it with PJ, that was more so laser focused on just playing Minecraft, playing like his own like weird niches, while I wanted to be more broad and have those conversations. And the serendipitous late September 2019
Yep.
that PJ wasn't available, and it was time for record, and he was like, ask Paul. He was like, ask Paul to join and see if you can do it. And we recorded that night after I had just come to from seeing the Joker movie, from the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. And we recorded, and when that happened, I was like, I remember after I finished, I literally posted, like, pitched it out to you. I was like, do you enjoy doing this? And you were like, yeah, I really liked it. I was like, I remember telling you, I'm gonna talk to PJ about it. I'd be like, what if like we end Statics Radio, and like we just relaunch as like a gaming podcast with Paul, with me and Paul, and you're out. And PJ was all over, or like all for that. In fact, ended the show like much sooner to just get it over with. And then I got sick on that last episode, so it was only you and PJ in the last episode. And I had made the joke that the Chinese people have come at me because we had talked about the Blitzchung, the Blitzchung controversy, the week before, when it was all four of us, Zach, PJ, you, and I, like in the podcast. Remember that? You're muted.
Yeah, we fired a little ambitiously on that. I don't know what we were thinking. It's like, yeah, China's after us. Oh my gosh.
I know, yeah. And that's the one of my favorites, where we're like even made the joke of like knocking, that they're coming to knock. That's how that ended. Yeah. And then the next episode, I was gone. But it was because I was sick.
Right.
Oh, man. And just to kind of give it time from when we ended the episode, we ended the episode around the time Jedi Fallen Order came out. Just to give you an idea when that happened.
Yeah. Wow.
With Statics Radio. So we started in 2020. You started leading the show because PJ kind of, it was like, yeah, have Paul host, and you had never hosted a show.
Right.
I was kind of like and I was your co-host, and I took over when we went on the first break, like when the pandemic hit, and then I was like, it's time for us to come back. It was 2 weeks later we came back. Then a month later we came back. Then a month later we came back, and then we were gone. And the last episode we recorded during the pandemic was the PlayStation Showcase, the one that revealed the console in June 2020. So we had just seen like that showcase, and The Last of Us Part 2 was just about to come out.
Oh, the before times.
Yes. And here's also a fun anecdote. We recorded another episode a month after. that never went live. Still hasn't gone live.
I forgot about that. There was something that we keep referencing that happened in that. I can't remember what it was though.
It was our spoiler cast for The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. And that's when we announced we were rebranding to Escape.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that never went live because I got so distracted I lost some of the files. I actually recovered the files. I have them. I have been like mulling over, being like, could I just post this kind of like as a weird time capsule? Sometimes like what we thought back then, because it was like solely posting, and because at that point we had lost interest of like, okay, I think we didn't have the cameras that we have now. Like we didn't even know like Statics was like, we don't feel confident about the Statics name because it's like a remnant from an old time. So we kind of like just held off. Then the week that we heard that MLB The Show was coming to Game Pass.
Oh my gosh.
And I went on a tirade on our chat. And I was like, gosh, I wish I had a place to vent this off. And here we are.
Who would have thought this has just been counseling for Alejandro for 3 years and all of the trauma and frustration he feels?
Yeah, it's just so funny. You used to think that was what rejiggered us, because it was like around that time you were listening to the Alana Pierce podcast with Austin Wintory and Mike Bithell and Troy Baker at Play Watch Listen, I think is what it's called. And you had said that now you had a better idea of like what podcast was.
I think I remember exactly when I said that. I was like, oh, I understand how podcasting works now.
Yeah.
Because man, I had no idea. I didn't even listen to podcasts when I started.
Yeah, it was weird that Peter kind of put that on you. Well, I had been listening to podcasts before, but kind of like the idea was that I was still running the website, so he didn't want me to run the website and do the podcast, kind of like have everyone be like on their lane.
It was racism, and he was giving the position of power to the white man.
Yeah. Yeah, and like a typical Latino, we like rise above.
Exactly.
we rise above. So yeah, it was like through that, and then you feeling more confident. And me like me being like, I'm gonna take hosting duties now, so you're just gonna be like the co-pilot this time. And they were like, we went in, we got the cameras, and we came back on May 4th, 2021, where the topics of conversation I remember from that episode were like the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart state of play, Last of Us Part 3 potentially being written.
Oh, yeah.
The death of Crash Bandicoot. Battlefield 6 potentially being teased. Those were like the points of conversations that we had like in that first episode. Then in the second episode we were talking about the Epic versus Apple, like the big kerfuffle with that. Yeah, the big kerfuffle of the Fortnite
commercial about it.
Yeah. Because that was when the discovery was coming. We're hearing so much interesting information, like Sony charging for crossplay and all that. Then the third episode was an interesting one because I was about to travel to go get my vaccine, and that's when you started getting back into, like, you got into Destiny 2 because you got them on sale, and I like coached you, and
that's how early I got it.
Yeah, within the third episode, and then after that episode, you joined our client, the client we have that you've been part of for the last 3 years. During those 3 episodes, we also had our favorite recurring guest, Vegetable Man.
The vegetable guy. Yeah, because you had was it where you were living?
Yes. No, it was like where my room was, where I was living.
I
that was out in the streets.
Like the time and the day that we were recording, like right at the end of our episode. For anybody that doesn't know, near the end of each episode we would record, we would just barely hear somebody go.
It would be like vegetable all the time.
It was a vegetable guy that was outside Alejandro's place, trying to sell all of his vegetables, and we just made like an entire storyline around him and trying to understand and quantify what this man was doing.
Because I'm around the time afterwards, I recorded like 4 episodes in a row, like 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I recorded 4 episodes in a row in the United States. I traveled with like my laptop, and remember I was like recording at a place where there was construction going. I was recording from like a closet. We had just started. You got to experience your first raid for the first time. Around the time you never completed a raid, you had like such a horrible opinion on raiding in Destiny 2. We were getting information about like upcoming showcases. E3 was about to come out. The Horizon State of Play. Remember when I was so excited about Horizon Forbidden West?
Oh yeah, you were really hyping that game up, and I was like, Alejandro, buddy, I'm not sure if they're gonna fix all of their issues with the story, the pacing, and the
Yeah,
characters overnight here.
yeah.
And
Remember book club. Remember when
yeah,
when we
we
yeah.
would sit back and try to play something together, and I don't know
Uh-huh.
how long that lasted because somebody decided to have a desire to go play whatever he wanted.
No, it was like we stopped it because you kept like
No,
not finishing. So I was
no,
like,
it was
this is not
definitely
it.
me
Yeah.
not finishing things in time, but
Uh,
then I feel like it flipped because
mm,
later on, even though we didn't do book club, it would be like, hey, let's go play this thing together that we
yeah,
just spent equal amount of money on, and
and
then
I
you
would play
just go
something
play
else.
something else entirely.
Yeah, that happened like in 2022. That became more of a problem. But yeah, it's like it's just funny thinking about kind of like those early those early things of like I am in my idea of book club at the time was to like institute like an idea that nothing's really coming out, like no, like we're like in a famish right now because it's still the pandemic time. uh Lockdown was still technically like had already been lifted, but everyone was maxed like with masks. Game development had been like had been disrupted at the time, and as we were like, when are we getting actual new games? We didn't have an arrangement either. So it was like
Right?
at that
That
point
was
it was like,
expensive.
yeah, it was really expensive. It was like just think about it like this: like Returnal and Resident Evil Village had already been out when we started the show. We didn't talk about those games because also I don't know if you remember the bit about this time. I didn't have a PS5.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
you
it took
had
a
it.
while.
Yeah,
When did you get it? There
I
was one
got
episode where you just like showed me the box, and I was
yes.
like, what is he showing me? Oh my gosh!
Hmm. Yeah, so how was that? In that first episode where we came back, I also talked about how like Sony was announcing that shortage problem was going to be an even bigger problem because they were just struggling to build these machines. I went on a rant saying that the biggest problem that's happening is that they have allocations. They're just giving it to online stores, and online stores were being hit by DDoSs, and they were also being hit by bots that were like all
Scalpers.
snagging. And I was like, my argument was like, lockdowns have been lifted, everyone's masked up, people are getting their vaccines. Can't you just like send a few units to a store for everyone to just walk in and buy it? And I remember PJ had told us that he saw one on retail and he ignored it. Remember, he was like, "Oh, this looks ugly," and I was like, "You better go back. I'm gonna send you the money for you." And then he went back and someone already got it. So it was like such a struggle. But it's funny, like I didn't tell you, but by episode 2, I bought the PS5 because a retailer here finally like they were gonna bring in like a Mother's Day promotion. Like that still cracks me up that they were gonna sell PS5 as a Mother's Day promotion. They just kind of like the store that did it just kind of lumped the holiday together as kind of like, yeah, come buy a PS5 for Mother's Day. And I got to like buy it through credit. I needed to pay like through credit, but it arrived all the way till episode 10. So I had to keep that yeah, so I had to keep that like hidden until the episode we were talking about potentially Grand Theft Auto 6, new Silent Hill games, Skyward Sword getting information because Skyward Sword was about to come out on like Switch. But I had to like play up the bit that I had bought a PS5 because until that whole moment I wanted to have the moment like what happened in that episode where we're talking about the games we were playing. I was like, yeah, I was playing Link to the Past on the Switch, and then I was playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I was like, oh yeah, how are you liking that? I was like, I'm playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And then you're like, and then that finally like you connect. It's like, wait, that's a PS5 game. And then I put the box in front of you, like, I got it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that was 10 episodes, and also within those 10 episodes, Paul, my favorite suffering, Abandoned.
Yep. If you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it
No,
up
we
because
have to. Yeah,
that was a saga for you. Just I watched this poor man go insane after a while.
uh, going down rabbit holes for because
Oh my
of.
gosh, you were adamant for some of that. My gosh,
Mhm.
I think about how you wanted death
Uh,
for everyone.
yes, episode 16, the episode we recorded on my birthday that year. So it was because it was like, so the Abandoned Saga went from episode 10 to episode 16 that year. And right before that, because it's like, you had finally something to make fun of me because just a few episodes ago, I got introduced to the thing that gave me so much ammo to torture you for an entire year, and you know what that was.
Was that the?
Chaos.
Yep. Okay, I had a feeling. I forgot for a second that it was called Stranger of Paradise, and I
Uh,
was like, it's the Jack the
yeah.
oh my
The
gosh,
Jack
that was
game.
a time.
Yes.
I'm just like reliving it all of a sudden because that was a horrifying time for me. I hated everything about that game and
Yes.
all of its
The
marketing.
trailer. Yeah, the trailer
Trailer.
specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like as the trailers started to come out more and more, I realized that this was just an extremely satirical story,
Yes.
very goofy.
Yeah, it
And
happened
it was
when it happened when they gave the game the date later that year at TGS, which was around episode 25, like episode 23 for us. That same year, which is crazy to think just how like those episode numbers just kind of keep going. But it was like that they gave us the release date and they dropped the demo. And before they dropped the demo, someone had already played the demo and clipped the Limp Bizkit the Limp Bizkit
that was
clip. And I think that's the one that when we knew that I was like, I cannot believe that this is real. And that's when that went into I had to see this because what made it funny is that you had sworn off that game immediately. I was like, yeah, it just looked bad. It's just so funny that Paul hates it. And then when people played the limited demo that you refused to play at E3, when they shadow dropped that demo that was corrupted the first day, they had to patch the demo. So it was like on top of like being a meme, the demo that they were gonna use to promote the game didn't even work. That's so hilarious, just absolute hilarity that how that happened. But people that played the demo were saying, "Oh my god, this is good." I was like, "There is no way that Paul that hates is like the game that like he had such a viscerally angry reaction to like didn't is it could be possibly
to
good."
clarify, viscerally angry for me,
Yeah,
which is like, this isn't a stupid thing,
yeah,
and then that's like the extent of it.
I know, but that's also funny. It's like in the time that I've known you, you haven't had a reaction to a game like you did that.
I think that's still
uh,
probably the worst.
yeah, it's still so funny, especially because that came in that E3 conference for Square Enix. That was like a 30-minute Guardians of the Galaxy demo. The Babylon's Fall announces a live service. Pixel Remaster Final Fantasy, just PC and mobile. It was like just hit after hit after hit of that, and then that ended with it ended with Stranger of Paradise as their closer.
What a time.
Yeah, and then it somehow turned out good. But it was so funny. We played the demo, and I played it on easy. You played it on normal, and you hated the demo. And I was like, play it on easy. Just play it on easy. Until the next demo the year after. That you finally played it on easy, you were like, crap, this is fun.
Mhm.
Oh, man.
It was a time, like the weird feeling of all of the progression was weird. The class system,
Mhm,
switching between all of that, kind of having to manage your crewmates as well at
mhm,
times. And then it finally clicked one day when the game finally came out and we played it together.
uh-huh.
Because I feel like I played a little bit of it by myself and then we switched to playing it together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
That was like, okay, this is kind of okay. I see where it was, and
yeah.
it was like, yeah, whatever.
This
And then it
game,
wasn't
yeah.
until you and I played together that I went, oh, okay, I can see
The
where the fun
co-op of that game was so fun, and especially
there.
us like laughing together at the stupidity, the punching of Skeletor, Jack doing the Liu Kang like kick to the Kraken, like well, it's like he just came up from like off screen already. He had already the kick, and then the Kraken just stopped him like it was the Matrix. It was like we came to the realization that was like Stranger of Paradise was the Shrek 2 of the Final Fantasy franchise, and he just made it so much so much funnier. And you still haven't beaten it, and I still tell you, like you have to see how that thing ends. It's ridiculous.
I
It's
need to.
it's absolutely ridiculous. Even if you only have to watch a video to do that, it's like it's just so insane. If you thought the game was insane, it just like goes off the deep end. But switch back to the abandoned shenanigans. Like I'll never forget the day after the day before or the few days before I was gonna record episode 16, which was the day for my 28th birthday. I'm 30 now, which is wild to think about now because how long ago that was. That's when I went and that explaining what had happened when they did the trailer app. That they were gonna, no, we're gonna reveal this in the trailer app because it's gonna be real time and all that. That app was not was not working. I was like a crazy clown, like in front of my computer, refreshing the app, being like, "Is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen?" Then Tony was like, "No, guys, we're a real developer. We're very passionate about this." I was like, "We're definitely gonna do all this," and then 2 days later is when they got it working, and the trailer was what they had already tweeted the 2 days before.
Yep.
It's the first time that I like threatened death. I think, yeah,
You said some very choice words, that's for sure.
yeah. I think I said I think I said that they should be hanged. They should have their balls cut off and fed
Yep.
into their
I
into their.
I remember, and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what possessed you for that. You were so like
Mm,
sure and hopeful and wanting this.
yeah.
And man, the conspiracy theories were all over.
Yeah, and I think like when I analyze back of why I felt like that, because that was around the time where Sony wasn't saying anything. This was a PS5 game. This as to like the constant thing that's been with this show is like Sony say something, because we went through E3, no showcase from them. We were like, damn, this like they had a showcase the year before, nothing this year. Only Xbox showed up, Nintendo showed up. Nintendo showed up with Metroid Dread, which is an interesting game for us now, looking back also for like this year. But it's like everyone was talking about them and Abandon being like a PS5 only thing that they gave a PS blog like space on. Be like, how did it's a scam game make it to the PS blog as like an official announcement, like a PS5 only game at a time where we were starving?
That's what still shocks me the most, I think, out of all of
Yeah.
this is that Sony, of all people,
Let that happen.
showcased
Yeah.
officially.
That's why a lot of people went down the rabbit hole, because had it never been featured, no one would have batted an eye. But so it was like there was so much baiting happened there, and it was around that time where then the Horizon State of Play happened and no release date. I was like, crap. I thought it was gonna be like a 2021 game, and I think it's gonna slip. And then Jeff Keighley's opening night live that year, which is like that one will always be an iconic one, because we were gonna do our reacts for that. And what were you doing, Paul?
Oh, I was cutting grass.
Yes, you're gardening.
Because I still want to like go back to the
Yeah.
in my head, I did not know we confirmed that for sure.
We did,
How we
because
would
yeah,
go back to it later.
No, like what had happened was that the day before we did the reacts for the Destiny 2 event, which is so funny how like Destiny gave us a lot of views like around that time, kind of like when we were doing reacts with our channel being like early. I was like, do you want to do like a reacts, kind of like a live reaction? Let's do a live reacts for the Destiny show. That was the Witch Queen reveal that led to the 30th anniversary stuff and launching the kind of like the season of the Lost. That was like we were a very active clan around that time. And then we watched the Xbox. It was like whatever they call the thing where they talk about trebuchet for like an entire hour. We were reacting to that, but people can go back and look back on our reacts. During that time, we literally stopped watching the reacts and we were like looking at we were playing Destiny while having that in the background. So, and opening night live was the day after. So I literally told the animal, I was like, yeah, I'll see you for the reacts for this last one. Then I sat to react. I was like, Paul, where were you? And you're gardening. So, and I didn't do the thing that I do now of starting recording and then you just join in. I was so dumb not doing that. I could have done it. So we just watched that. But that was the first time we brought Zach.
Yeah.
Zach joined us for like post.
And he showed up as like
a shadow.
Yeah, because he couldn't figure out how on his end
his
it was all bright.
Yeah.
But for some reason his camera would darken the room so that he looked like he was a witness protecting the victim.
That was so funny because everyone go back and look back at that video. I don't know how.
Say the episode number again.
Episode 17.
17. Got it.
Yeah, it was like I'm like opening it. Yeah, he's there. Oh man, that's so funny. Episode 7. Yeah, everyone go. It's Gamescom 2020 on opening night live showcase reaction. So that was one of our most watched episodes around the time. So it was funny. It happened when we had a ghost as our third share. And fun fact, around this time was like this was also gonna be the second time after this episode where you were gonna go missing, because the first time you missed was episode 8. That was your vacation at Destin, Florida. Episode 8 was the Nintendo E3 analysis that I did with PJ. I brought him in to talk about the Nintendo Direct. That was really good. That had Metroid Dread, Skyward Sword. They showed us the new Zelda, more a little bit of what ended up being Tears of the Kingdom, but
because they still didn't have a name for it at that point.
Until we got that name until September 2022, which I can't wait to talk about as we go quickly for that one. But it was like and then a natural disaster delayed you after we did that. After we did the Gamescom thing, so after
that was the hurricane.
Yeah, your Hurricane Ida, Cat 4, basically your second most disastrous hurricane you lived through.
Yeah,
after Katrina.
And I was, for anybody that wasn't there for that, that was 9 to 10 days of no power, trapped at my parents' house. We were laid out on the tile floor to try to get some kind of cool from
Mm.
the like 100-degree weather. Um,
Awful, man.
we and then like we managed to get because they had a natural gas generator, but the
Mm-hmm.
problem is you can only run it for a certain amount of time. And of course, you're trying to use it for your fridge
Uh-huh.
to keep that alive, which takes a lot of power. And then like you have a little bit of extra power for any of the other things. And whenever nobody was on anything else, I could hook up my PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And
And you're
I
using data
played
to try to play Destiny. I
I
remember.
was adamant that I really wanted to try playing Destiny, so I tried, and of course that wasn't doing a great job, and so I played the next best game, The Last of Us
That's the
Part
part
2.
two.
So I'm going through literal like destroyed Seattle,
uh,
flooded everything, and I remembered talking about the
how eerie.
everybody yeah, how eerie it is, how weird that felt, and then the like the random little thing was that everyone's like, "Oh man, it's such a cool place to live," and I was like, "You forget, my friend, the
Mm,
smell of mold will
yeah.
destroy you."
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll never forget like what possessed. I remember asking like what possessed you to play The Last of Us Part Two, like while you were going through your own flooding disaster, which a big flood happens in that game,
yeah.
like late, like in day three. So I was like, so I guess the human body really likes to also recreate their own misery sometimes in playable
Sometimes,
form.
man, I didn't have a whole lot of stuff installed on there, honestly, and that was probably like the most big budget. Like I could just go through and play this game for the fun of it all, because I was doing my John Wick playthrough where
Yeah,
I'm
the glitch
like,
where you got the infinite ammo. I
yeah,
remember.
well, I don't think it was a glitch. It was the accessibility options.
It was like manipulating the accessibility option for you to use the infinite ammo on a first time playthrough of Grounded. Because you needed to
Oh,
be the game
okay.
first. Yeah, you needed
So,
to be the game
yeah,
first to
how
get
did
that.
I don't know how I did that, honestly. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it just happened to let you on grounded for some reason. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why or how, but yeah, so I was going through that and that was a lot of fun. But I think that kind of distracted away from the misery of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know, maybe something about Seattle specifically destroyed
Mm-hmm.
was just like serene,
Uh-huh.
where here it's like hot and miserable.
Yeah, it would be drizzly and cool over there. It would feel like a
Yeah.
different vibe. So it's so funny how that happened because then the week after you survived Hurricane Ida, you booked it back like so quick because
Hmm.
Sony randomly announced a PlayStation Showcase.
Yep.
After we had talked about in the Gamescom episode when they announced their reveal of the date for Horizon Forbidden West, there I was like, oh my god, that's like one of their biggest games, and they're already given the date here. They're not doing a showcase. I remember how dismayed we were. It's like, how do they let that happen? It's like they don't really want to talk at all. But then they were like, no, we're doing one. And we're doing it the day you're coming back. And you had to book it. You went to buy groceries and you literally landed. And we got to react to that one. And
I
I
think I
remember,
remember that was a good time, wasn't it?
yeah, that was a good showcase. KOTOR Remake,
Oh my God.
Project Eve, which ended up being Stellar Blade. Forspoken was shown more. Alan Wake Remastered was officially revealed there. Uncharted 4 officially getting the PS5 version that we have been talking about. Like, man, all these PS4 games are getting the 60 frames patch. It's like, why is Uncharted 4 not getting it? And we thought it was gonna get 60 frames because they announced that they were working on a PC version of that game and wanted the financials around this time in 2021, like episode 3 or 4 where we were recording about it. And it showed up there as a Legacy of Thieves collection. And then we got the double whammy that was Wolverine from Insomniac. We were like, holy
Yeah.
crap. Like, also remember, people, it's like, this was the time when I was still not burnt out on Marvel. Marvel was still exciting for me. So the fact we were like, oh my god, they're doing Wolverine? We haven't had a Wolverine since X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's like, but then as we were like chatting about it, because it was like they showed Wolverine and then they showed a trailer of Gran Turismo 7. So it was like, we ignored this Gran Turismo 7. We were just talking about Wolverine. And immediately it was like, but wait, so that means Spider-Man 2 is not happening right now? And then boom, they also announced Spider-Man 2
Right
with
there.
the two Spider-Man, and that was gonna have Venom in it, that it was gonna come out in 2023. And then afterwards they showed the first gameplay reveal of God of War Ragnarok, which earlier that year got delayed in episode 6 of that of our podcast. And that was kind of like one of the big reasons I wanted a PS5, because I was like, oh my god, at that time, remember, God of War 2018 was my favorite game of all time. It's no longer that. But it was like I was like, oh my god, finally God of War. And at that time, that's when I knew that you were not as big on God of War 2018 as I was. After that gameplay show, that was something that you kind of came around to when you replayed it in 2022. but that's for much later. But that was a good showcase. I was like, crap, it's like Spider-Man 2, the sequel to your favorite, one of favorite games of all time. The 2018 Spider-Man is like a Wolverine game, me getting God of War gameplay, being like, okay, so this is definitely coming the next year. So good times with that showcase. And then we entered a brief period where we experimented with the show. We were like, hey, how about we separate the episodes into 2 segments that we record separately? One day, we're just gonna talk news. Hopefully it only takes like an hour. And then the other times, we're gonna talk about the games that we're playing and topic. Because I was like, you love the idea of topics, and there were some fun topics that we talked around that. Kind of like what would be like a dream game, I think, was a topic. What set us on our console allegiance, I think, was another topic. Another topic was one that still resonates with me so heavily now, because we have met someone that literally lives that mentality with, are gamers too focused on finding the next masterpiece and just ignoring good or great games, which not elaborately, like, I think how we elaborate the question and I answered it wasn't quite right, but the question was so relevant because over time, and I was seeing reactions to stuff that we thought were good and we were like, why are people poo-pooing this? That became so relevant, and it's more relevant now than ever. So it was like, those were fun, but we stopped doing it because the episodes were so long.
They were way too long. I was still so proud of the topic that I would come up with each week, and it would always prompt some really good discussion out of us, but it was just too much, because we would start this question that would lead us down some kind of rabbit hole that would lead so far, and there was a point where I was like, why don't we just get rid of the news and talk about topics all day?
I know, yeah. And it's so funny because it's like usually news kind of like give us the topic for it.
Right.
like the topic
that was
for, like,
during the stage of life where there wasn't really enough like good news. It felt like we were really trying to pull something out of nothing, where it was like there might be 2 or 3 pieces of news that's like, all right, let's kind of talk about this, and there was just nothing really going on. And now, of course, everything is terrible and there's too much to talk about all the time.
Right. I kind of miss those quaint days. Yeah. Around this time, the news had stopped because games started coming out. Deathloop was one of the first big games that we started playing, and we actually played because it reviewed so highly.
Yep.
IGN and GameSpot giving it a 10. We're like, what the frick with this game? And
it was definitely one of those games that you seemed like it was, or everybody seemed like, oh shoot, it's so profound. And then the more you replayed it, you went, there's not as much here that I thought that there would be, because everyone ended up in the same direction. You thought that there was like more ways to end the way
it just funneled you. It just directly funneled you at the end, and
but how well it funneled you to the point that everybody thought that they were doing like the genius thing and playing it like that. There, to be fair, there's a lot of variation you can do on within that realm, but the like meta narrative side of it definitely fell apart after a while. But we recently revisited the concept of that when we were talking about Prey earlier in this episode, and I'm still thinking about replaying Deathloop on a different account just to restart everything from scratch.
Do it on Xbox because it's on Game Pass. Maybe kind of like
it's either that or I can play it on our shared account in PlayStation 5. So it's kind of
technically you bought it.
I do have it, so I can play it on there regardless. So that's kind of what I was planning on doing anyway. But I don't know. We'll see.
Deathloop was a good game. I feel like I've from moment to moment it's so much fun. It was the illusion. I think it was like knowing that it reviewed so highly, like so highly, that makes me sour on like the idea of Deathloop more, because it's like, man, the reviewers really like blew up the smoke up this game's butt. Like it was really good, but it wasn't a 10. So
I think that it's because everybody set up the expectations wrong, and then even the people themselves got, well, 2 things. It was they got way too much time to talk about the concept, and we were like, why are they talking about this again? Because we just heard about it. I remember that was an episode for us, and we were like, are they showing this to us again? Like we were showing the Sheen from Jimmy Neutron. We're like, this is Ultra Lord. It's like, this is the 7th time you've shown us Deathloop.
It was the showcase, the PlayStation showcase from 2021. They showed it again. That's when we're talking about it. It's like, this game's about to come out. I feel we've seen it so much. Like, it was in 2 state of plays before. The one that had that Stranding director's cut, that had the whale that scared you. So
the way the devs just kind of like misrepresented, I think, what the game actually is. I think if they'd clarified it a little differently and been like, hey, listen, it's a it's like a looping process. You go through it and you have
Mhm.
to figure out the right way to do it. And that's what is going to get you out of here instead of why don't you figure out like the
Mhm.
perfect way to get everything going as opposed to like they kind of set everybody up for failure by
Mhm.
saying it was more ambitious than it actually was. But I feel like if they just said, hey, you're trapped in this thing, you got to find the right way out.
Mhm.
Okay, there it is. That means there's a way out and we got to find it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Prey. Like,
Mhm.
just from representing the game correctly, of like, hey, you are trapped. There's some weird aliens. Figure out how to blow up the station. That's
Mhm.
like just you set that up pretty quickly, and all right, that's the process. Here we go. And then everything else is just kind of out of that. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it was.
rough.
Yeah, it's rough, but it's still like I look more fondly now of Deathloop because eventually, like, I did go into, man, this game was really overrated, but I'm like, no, it was actually a really good game that I just got all the praise because it felt better during a famish. Remember when we were talking like in 2022 when we actually experienced true famish,
Oh
how
yeah.
much so much stuff felt better just because of the famish itself, and I feel Deathloop got propped up because of that around that time in 2021. That was
Because I think Sony just didn't have a whole lot of
they had nothing.
options.
They had nothing because around that time we got Kina Breach of Spirits, which was
Oh
such a
yeah.
yeah
Mm, that
that,
was
that
a
was
time.
yeah that was such a I remember the first time I booted that game, I was mesmerized. I was like, holy crap! It's like it's the Pixar because at that point I had not like finished Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which was actual Pixar. We played
Mm.
and finished that game much later, but it's like when I remember when I played it, it was like, oh my god, this feels like every game I love in this like incredible animation that reminds me of the Majora's Mask short that these guys did. I remember we went on a whole tirade with that game, how like it made us feel like children again. It's like we went like we really like blew up the smoke up
Oh
Kina
yeah.
with how much it felt, and
I mean, it deserves so much of
mhm,
it though. And I'll
yeah.
hold to a lot of the stuff that I said because it made me feel like I was remembering like playing an old Jack and Daxter
Mhm.
game. I forget the other stuff that we talked about at the time in comparison
It was
to it.
like Assassin's Creed without the bloat. I think was something else that you said,
Yeah,
which
maybe so.
yeah, well, it was a weird one to
Because
say, but
well, I could see it
mhm.
from, well, I'm trying to like kind of
Open world.
forensics my own thoughts because it was like an open world area, but you had like a spot, you branched off and you did something and then you came back to
Hmm.
the focus. Like that was the proto
Hmm.
Ubisoft
Yeah.
process, whereas like you went to an area, you did a couple of missions, and then you did the final thing, and then
Hmm.
you came back to the main area, and then you did something else that gave you an ability. I realistically it was probably more like Zelda than Assassin's Creed, but I don't know. Maybe I was on a weird kick that day.
I know. Yeah,
We were talking about Valhalla, maybe, but
yeah, yeah. I think
anyway,
yeah, but I still had not gone back to my Assassin's Creed stuff around that time because that was the year after. But Kina
we're
was
gonna get to that, I'm
yes,
sure. But if we're
yeah.
not careful, we're gonna sit
I
here
know,
for
I
two
know.
hours.
That's what, the good thing is that we talk so much about 2021 that the other years are much easier to parse out like memorable moments because the
True.
first year was so interesting.
There's a
But
lot of
yeah,
highs and lows, that's for sure.
yeah. Like remember the 3 episode saga for Metroid Dread? This was around that time. This
Oh
was around
yeah,
that time.
that was a dark time for everybody involved.
Yes, because it was like we got like PJ blew up that game smoke up, blew up the smoke up that game's ass also,
Hmm.
uh, and he was so adamant I played it. He bought it for me, like he paid like for half of it. That
That's right.
yeah, that is what sparked me the idea of like, what if we do account sharing? Because he did that for me, but he also just sent me the money. I was like, what if I do that? Because like, this was also a year where we're like, why we had all this conversation was because we're not much buying games because we were just buying them ourselves. So it's like waiting on sales and all that. So the time that we actually bought a new game, we like really talked about it. So Metroid, he bought it and I started playing. I was like, oh my god, this is really good. And I told you and Zach was like, yeah, you guys need to play. And then Zach bought it. You ended up buying it too. And
I
we
mean,
didn't
in their
speak.
defense, it was a really solid first like 80% of the game, I
Mm-hmm.
think. The only thing is though, I had never played a Metroid game,
Mm-hmm. That was your first one.
and
Yeah.
I did not know how, like, they assumed that everyone knew how Metroid games were supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, oh, okay, I'm just supposed to like run around this ship and do stuff. And then I was like, why the heck is everything blocked off all the
Uh-huh.
time? Why can't I go anywhere?
I know.
Because it's that's what Metroid games are, is like the illusion of like a huge space. Or rather, I've seen it done so many other ways now where like you can still access most of the map,
Hmm.
but Metroid is not like that, where it's
No.
like you go through stages of linearity and like, oh, there just happens to be a fire here now that you
Hmm.
can't access this area, but you didn't know that until you explored the whole map. So it led me to go so many different ways that I wasn't supposed to,
Hmm.
thinking that I just keep exploring.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was like I since I was a Metroid fan, I knew how that played out. But I tell you, like the last boss was really BS. It was like
Oh yeah.
I felt Nirvana beating it, but it was like that's one of those examples of I haven't known you of a game like completely utterly ruined by that horrible final boss for you, like for you and Zach, like that
Hmm.
ruined it. And it was fun how then we had that debate with PJ. We brought him in that we thought it was gonna be a much more contentious, fiery discussion, and it was one of the best discussions all the three of us had together because PJ actually presented his position really well in a way that was understandable. Because I remember you and I we were bracing for impact. We were like, "Oh man, this is gonna be a massive shit show," and it wasn't. That was such a fun time that we had that we actually had with him. And let's not also forget about Battlefield 2042, Paul. Oh man,
Gosh. I was really
remember?
going to bat for this one before the release, I
Yeah,
tell
the
you.
copium.
Yep.
It was like the copium you had for this Battlefield was like really, really hard. It was really brutal to see, like because you absolutely went for it because your crew that you played online with was adamant that they were gonna get it. So you wanted to be there, and then you had to like really witness another disastrous Battlefield launch. That when I played because I remember it was like when we were still doing the separate episodes where we brought Zach into one of those. We had just played the beta that was horrible with the strobe light, with the coloring strobe light like rubber banding, and I begged. I was like, I remember begging that should be like, please delay this. This is not it. You're gonna ruin your reputation. And then you're like, no, it's gonna be fine. And look where it is now.
Yep. And
Yeah.
they tried to fix it, but the
Mm-hmm.
public has changed so much because
Yeah.
that's the other thing is when you have like your No Man's Sky, because all you need to do is fix it for the one person experiencing that and
Mm-hmm.
like any of the couple of people that they're going to bump into or want to play with.
Mm-hmm.
But for a Battlefield game, when you're touting the 64 player matches and
Mm-hmm.
128 player matches, that means you have to fix it for all of those people, and you have to make sure that all of them keep playing
Mm-hmm.
because then your game's unplayable. Because then you
Yeah.
have this huge map of nobody, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I've seen. When you run out there and you've got like 30 people in a giant map like that, you can't find anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You run around, you get sniped by people because that's the only viable play style left,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not a great time. And they've added so much stuff and like props to them. They changed a lot of the things that, or walked back a lot of the things that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just not enough. Like it's already over.
Yeah.
You, the fact that you're working on the next one right now is kind of proof of that because originally I think 2042 was supposed to be like the end
Long
all be all
encompassing. Yeah.
because you had all of the was the portal mode or something where
Mm-hmm.
you
The
could go
portal. Mm-hmm.
into like the World War One, World War Two era, the
Battlefield Bad Company
1942
2
side.
and Battlefield
Yep,
3.
that
Mm-hmm.
was right. And my goodness, what a time.
Yeah. It
Ah,
was such a bummer because it's like EA just recently announced that they're about to announce another one. I'm like, I feel nothing. And what did CEO Andrew Wilson announce? It's gonna be an incredible live service. I'm like, Jesus Christ. They just don't get it, do they? They absolutely don't get it. So that was a huge, huge disappointment, I would say, right, Paul? One of the during this period of time that we were recording.
mm,
Yeah. Another huge disappointment.
mm,
Halo Infinite.
yeah.
Remember around this time where we were so up Halo's butt that we
Oh,
actually briefly toyed around with Let's Plays and we played through Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo 4, and Halo 5 you for the first time. Like we streamed them. We posted the videos of that game. Like we played it together. We were like
yep.
it was I loved the lead up we had for Halo Infinite. I absolutely loved that because it was like getting to experience that with you online. Uh, and
I'm
then
glad that there's an actual follow up to all of that. Actually, wait a second. We only uploaded the first three Halos.
We didn't upload 4 and 5. I thought I did. If not, I missed. I completely
I
missed.
made the thumbnails for 4.
Uh huh.
It's not on our
It's on the playlist.
playlist, but I feel like 4 got made,
Yeah.
but 5 did not ever get uploaded.
Yeah, that's again also some of those things that sometimes we started didn't put out, but we kind of kept testing. But it was like weirdly trying to extract them from Twitch was a real problem. I didn't have the computer that I have now, but it was like that was like us trying to see could we do more Let's Play content to try to like spice up the content on our channel because these games that we're playing and leading up into as something that was highly anticipated, which was Halo Infinite. We played on PC. We didn't have Xboxes then. The disappointment of Halo Infinite is more about what came after than what happened initially. I enjoyed this game at the time, but I enjoyed it more for its multiplayer than its campaign. The campaign, I was like, this was a fun open world, but it's like not too memorable, but it feels like glorified cleanup for Halo 5. Or more like cleaning up a Halo 6 we never got. But hopefully, now that the cleanup is done, the expansions that they said that were coming because this is an infinite platform is gonna fill that up. Never happened. Multiplayer still supported. Multiplayer is really good. But this package is the all-encompassing Halo package that was going to take care of the needs of multiplayer and single player, spectacularly unfulfilled. I briefly mentioned to you kind of like what triggered me going back to Spider-Man 2 because there was a fiery conversation happening over the Season Gaming Bitcast chat. Two of the guys there, like, they say that Halo Infinite was the game of the year of 2021, like, fact, and I'm like, not even close. Like, not even close. Is that?
What was their what was their like reasoning behind that?
They say the story is incredible, the best story campaign, and I'm like, and the best multiplayer. I'm like, I'll give you multiplayer, especially now.
Yeah.
Now, especially now because it's fun to play. I will never accept anyone saying that the Halo Infinite campaign story is good. It's not. It absolutely is not. It depends, again, so much on outside lore to try to make sense of stuff that they're trying to bring in. That's bad storytelling. If you need homework to make it work, and that's been 343's problem. That happened to Halo 5 also. A lot of the dev was like outside. So it was like no, because they were talking about how Ains, my EIC, was mentioning how Hogue was like telling that the story of Spider-Man 2 is atrocious, the worst thing, like the worst story of the generation, and blah blah blah. And there was Adamance also from within the same guy that was like Halo Infinite. It's like was Game of the Year 2021. He was like it's not even close to atrocious and all that. And I kind of was starting chiming in, and he was like giving like his defense of it. That's when I was like, you know what, I need to replay this. Because it's like I absolutely need to replay. It's like those fiery conversations were happening, but yeah. So it was like, yeah, it's like the Halo Infinite was how we ended 2021, and I remember you mentioned you finished the campaign and completely forgot about it. That was kind of like that was kind of like your thoughts about it.
Like to kind of encompass it, like 2018 Spider-Man is a game that I've replayed 4, maybe 5 times. I don't even skip the cutscenes because it's just so fun to watch my Spider-Man running around with all of the characters, and how much time I spent just swinging through, especially back when I was dating my wife, my now wife, and I would just play through that while I was on the phone.
I thought we were going to talk about Halo, and we moved to Spider-Man.
That's on you, man.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
I know. Yeah, because I had mentioned Halo Infinite, because I mentioned Halo Infinite, you finished it and didn't think about it again, and you just jumped to Spider-Man.
Yep.
but it's funny because Spider-Man will come on later. Obviously, we don't want to dwell too much because like the next few years are going to be quicker. 2021 is just more special to me because of how much we did.
I feel like you're going to say that, and then we're going to get to something cool in 2022 and 3, and we're going to get.
That's the thing, Paul. What was cool about 2022? Just out of the top of your hand, out of the top of your head.
The amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta remember what was even my top 3 of that year. Hang on.
Elden Ring, Ragnarok.
Yeah. Okay,
and,
so
Witcher.
Elden Ring was a crazy experience for that. So that was going to be a large part of what I talked about for that. But for the most part, yeah, it's definitely not as much of a there's a lot of honorable mentions. The fact that Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer managed to get in there.
For you?
Yeah. Hey, Crisis Core, that was a big year for that.
Yeah, it's like some of the elements that I kind of want to like briefly mention with that one, because now 2021 was more nuanced episode to episode. What we ended up doing 2022 is clear cut. I enjoy us finally doing Game of the Year for the first time. We did our most anticipated episode the day before they announced the damn acquisition for Activision Blizzard that dominated the headlines for us for like an entire year and a half. Such an exhausting time of like news covering. But the first few months of that year, total gaming bliss. Sifu, our first like joint for me after I proposed to you the joint account where we're gonna be like, we have to cover more games. We cannot do what we've been doing of just waiting and not thinking there's not, because we're refusing to buy games like full price ourselves. So we're like, let's do this arrangement. Sifu was the first one. We ignored Dead Island, Dying Light 2, but then Horizon Forbidden West finally came out for me. I love how the thumbnail says we love Horizon. Approved. It's the thumbnails you put in. I did at the time. I don't think about that game much this time.
I liked it more than
Zero Dawn. You like playing it more than Zero Dawn. Yeah. It's better to play.
And the ending was like good, but it was like, I imagine watching Endgame if you had never seen any of the previous movies and you're like, I don't know who these characters are. Why are they important?
I know. Yeah, so it's just that Forbidden West made it clear for me how it's not a franchise that sticks in the mind. It's fun in the moment. It's candy. It's great eye candy. It's beautiful. One of the most beautiful games on the system. But it's like, it didn't linger in the mind. Made it even more clear. Because literally the week after we said, hey, we love Horizon. This may be a good open world for us for the next time. Oh yeah, Elden Ring's coming out. I think we can wait.
Mm-hmm.
And then the day before the reviews happened, remember that morning? I was like, Paul, this is me looking at all these Elden Ring reviews. And I kept like posting you like a huge list of screenshots with 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 game of the all time and all that. And then you put a smiley, like the laughing emoticon for every picture that I sent you. For every picture that I sent you. Because we were like, crap, well now we have to play this, right? Witch Queen happened around that time. We briefly played it. The campaign was amazing. But Elden Ring was like crap. It's like,
oh yeah,
are we in another gaming moment? Remember how much we didn't like it the first day? Elden Ring? We're like, I'm not feeling this.
I was not feeling it at all. It was boring. There wasn't a whole lot, but it's really a game that lives and dies on the amount of like what you have picked up and being able to use that to your advantage. Because when you start with nothing, obviously it just sucks.
Yeah.
For gaming, man, that was a time.
Yeah, and also you alluded to it earlier. That was the beginning of me pivoting from playing the big thing at the time, because I went on a Dark Souls 1 binge like randomly.
Yep, right in the middle of it, didn't you?
Oh yeah, and it was like you kept playing Elden Ring. Then even you stopped playing for a little bit.
Yeah,
you burnt out a little bit from Elden Ring after a while.
It was a very beefy game, and I can't even remember how many hours I put into it, but there was a point where 89. I was just like, it is thank you. How do you remember this stuff?
Because it was at the same time, it was around the same time I put into the game.
So oh my gosh, yeah. So it was a lot to put into a game. Even at how much I love a game, putting that much into it, especially that level of amount of time during that era of time in my life, was just like too much of a good thing. It becomes a real problem.
Yes. And because I remember it's like you and Zach, because Zach eventually joined in. This was also his entrance into the Souls likes. You guys were playing it, I was playing Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And I was like, after a while, like I used you guys as kind of like guide, and I leapfrogged you and ended up beating the game before you guys did. It was like an interesting, it's interesting how that happened. I'll also never forget, I still have the screenshot of me flipping the bird to the Elden Beast because I freaking hated that boss fight. That was my Metroid Dread moment with that game, where it's like, simultaneously I feel Elden Ring is one of the absolute best games that had come out during the time that we made this show. At the same time, that was not my game of the year at the time, because I felt such contempt towards the Elden Beast that I didn't want to reward it like my number one, despite like the rest of that game being like number one worthy. But what I remember most of how much Elden Ring subsumed the conversation, that all the games that we bought after Elden Ring came out kind of got all lost in the shuffle. Stranger of Paradise, Ghostwire Tokyo, Lego Star Wars, The Skywalker Saga. It was like everything that was kind of afterward, like Elden Ring was just subsuming it. The conversation was just all that. And that's when I learned that I really don't like a one game just completely dominating an entire conversation, because everything else around it gets lost, that then perceptions are worse than it is about like, is there nothing here? Even though this year, nothing came out after April. This was the year of the finish. And during this year, like, we were having, like, we had to, like, really make do with, like, headlines, like a new Witcher game, the new PlayStation Plus, when they finally introduced the new tiers. They were like, are they gonna do Game Pass? And man, this is actually pretty disappointing. One of the first times that E3 died again after we had E3. We had E3
every time.
Yeah, I think we killed E3 3 times
Yep.
with this thing. Kingdom Hearts 4 announced around this time. Can you believe that happened around then? I was hearing about Amy Hennig coming back to Uncharted. I mean, not Amy Hennig coming back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
And she was also gonna do a Marvel game. I was learning that Naughty Dog was gonna just continue to do Last of Us and Uncharted, and I was being like doing the drunk guy meme or the Ben Affleck meme. I'm like, God damn it, it's really nothing new with them. Episode 50 around this time, Square Enix sells out Tomb Raider and developer Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, the guys that made Deus Ex. And that episode 50 was when Jedi Survivor got delayed. We were hoping Jedi Survivor was gonna be 2022. Not a fun episode 50, I tell you.
That was a journey, I tell you.
Yeah.
All of this stuff between everything going on,
Uh-huh.
Nintendo really disappointing us. I remember when we woke up. That was when we woke up for like 6 a.m.
September 2022. Yeah,
okay. I wanted to at least bring that up because we were livid by how much we just clowned ourselves trying to convince ourselves that we knew what was coming.
Yeah, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess announcements were coming, and it didn't happen. Around this time, I went on my FIFA tirade when EA Sports was gonna chair. Like, I was like so chill, and then suddenly I went on like a huge rant because like you felt it, the delays of Starfield. And
I loved the thumbnail that I created for this, where it's 2 6 dudes and the exciting many delays of 2022.
Yeah,
and we were just the picture of the dad from Coraline and Bob Parr from The Incredibles, just both looking so miserable. And I know
we were sick that day. Yeah, we were sick.
It was bad.
Yeah,
but we were still there. Look at us.
Yeah, so we didn't stop. Episode 53, my all-time favorite episode we recorded. The games that made us. Yes. One of our first evergreens. And me making sure this was not gonna be the thing that happened like last year that you were gonna go on vacation. I was like, let's just record early, do something. And then we talked about a game. It's like this was just pure celebration of like what games stood out for us with every system that we own. That was such a good idea of doing that. We moved into the around this time, like we also moved into just talking about the game showcases. We're like bracing for that. The state of play around that time, which had Resident Evil 4, Street Fighter 6, Callisto Protocol, and Final Fantasy 16, was like, holy crap, this was a great state of play. I cannot believe it. And you turn around on your opinion with Final Fantasy 16 looking there because you looked at it at 480p resolution. Yep. You didn't know what you were looking at. I was like, and then you started images.
I still didn't like the UI's color saturation. It was a weird style choice for me. I wasn't really getting like what the focus was because they were like, oh, it's on the summons. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's the least interesting part of Final Fantasy. What the heck?
Which was like the most how can I say this? The most insane word I've ever heard anyone that played Final Fantasy, because everyone loves the summons.
Well, they love the summons as like a gameplay element of it, but it's never like the focus. It's always
the story,
the crazy, like the worlds, the characters within that, the plucky crew that gets together and goes to deal with it. And then like the summons were not that like afterthought, but it's like you use the summons to do the cool stuff. It was never like the focus, if that makes sense. So that's where I was like, what is this? I don't really care about this. This isn't really that cool.
Yes. Cool. And then when you saw the internet, like, was raving about that trailer, like with the screens just posted, and you were like, this didn't look like a watch.
I did not appreciate the fake Game of Thrones vibes I was getting, and I'm so glad that they did not last.
Yes,
and it's funny because everybody was like, "Oh, it's like Game of Thrones now," and it's like, no, it's not. It's like Game of Thrones for like 2 hours out of 60, and stuck it.
and just aesthetically remains Game of Thrones, but it's not Game of Thrones. It's a full-on Final Fantasy.
Completely, not even close to all of that nonsense. Yes. So I'm glad that it was.
Episode 56. I remember that one because we were gonna talk about the Xbox showcase. That's when they showed Starfield for the first time, and that was the first time you were like, crap, I hate this is not on PlayStation. That was like what planted the seed of us getting a Series S, because it was like, oh, we want this. That seems like a dream game. But before like we posted that episode, the Square Enix like Final Fantasy 7 like 25th and like anniversary stream happened, and we were not gonna react to it because you were gonna be doing stuff. I was at a supermarket, like, or more like I drove to a supermarket and took some workers to go buy some groceries. I was like sitting in my chair looking at the stream, and then the Crisis Core remake was announced. I was like, dude, because I had just remembered episode 53, you mentioning Crisis Core as your PSP favorite game of all time there. And I was like, I just literally put in all caps, Crisis Core remake. That's all I said.
I don't remember what my exact reaction was, but man,
you posted that Jim in the office, the Jim from the office picture that he has like the hand.
Oh yeah, he's like crying, laughing, or smiling.
Yes.
And man, yeah, that is, whew, that was a time.
Dude, considering where I am with Final Fantasy now, that episode will always remain special because that was when Crisis Core happened. That's when it finally gave me the chance later that year to play, and look where I am with that franchise now. Rebirth was announced then at the same time. Can you believe that? That was when it was given the name. That was when like those two games happened. It's like, gosh, that was a good time there. Like now looking back in hindsight, it's like that was a flashpoint moment for me. It's so wild. And another fun flashpoint moment a few episodes later. Remember the whole God of War Ragnarok release date fiasco, like drama?
I think so.
That it was like everyone was leaking that it was probably gonna be announced at the end of the month, and it ended up not happening, and people were sending death threats to Cory Barlog, Alana
They were like, yeah, it's gonna get delayed. It's
and they're like, no, we just haven't announced it. And then the week after they announced that it's coming on 11/9/2022. I remember. Gosh, that was like remember how conservative I was with Ragnarok? How I was so afraid to get excited.
You wouldn't allow yourself to get excited at all, especially after the complete opposite treatment with Horizon Forbidden West, where you were just so gung-ho about it. And I was like, why are you excited about this and not God of War? And you're like, I can't allow myself to.
I know. and with that one, it was because I knew they had to release this. It was like, at least I know it's imminent. And I was believing on its potential as an improved sequel. That was kind of like my hope for that. Whereas God of War was like, how do I follow up on a game that I called the first one my favorite game of all time at the time, a game so special to me? So it was like so hard for me to get excited, but it was until it went gold when I finally got excited later that day, later in that year, because it's like nothing really happened in between afterwards other than like KOTOR dying. Can you believe that? And Embracer and buys everything. That was like kind of like what happened around that time, which, oof.
There was like a moment where we were like both optimistic and pessimistic. We were like, well, now it's under this really big studio, and maybe they're just gathering all that they want to be able to put out their own stuff, because it's all stuff that's like nothing's being made for it. Now I guess this is like, let's see what this is gonna be, what their plan is, because you can't have all of these purchases without a plan. And then turns out, oh, they didn't have a plan. Who would have thought?
It sucked, absolutely sucked. Like seeing that, like that how bad this flashpoint ended up being. Now looking back, I'm like, gosh damn it. It's like, why did they allow that to happen? Look how many studios they've closed, and what a disaster there. That now they're 3 different companies. So the Destiny 2 showcase also happened here. The one that about Lightfall, our most watched video on the channel, by the way. Still, our reactions to Lightfall. How naive we were that this Thor Ragnarok look of like synthwave Destiny was gonna be awesome, and it was far from awesome. And look where Destiny is now. Oh gosh, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess Vision. I still remain salty thinking about waking up early for that day.
Yep.
Salty because it was so we were so salty that Tears of the Kingdom got its name, and we didn't even react.
We didn't even care.
Yeah, we didn't even care.
It was also, I don't know, to me it felt like a lackluster trailer as well. So I think that was one part of it.
Yeah, it was like compounded. It compounded the disappointment. It was just like a name reveal. That was like, okay, it has a name, so I believe it will release now, because they gave it a date here, May 12th. So, but it was like we were so gung ho of wanting Wind Waker. I remember that day because we had 2 showcases that day. The State of Play and this one is like that morning. I was so grumpy. I remember sending you screenshots of me potentially buying a Wii U, modded Wii U to have like Wind Waker. I was like, I was gonna spend on a reasonable amount of money because I was like so salty about that. And then we watched the State of Play that had Tekken 8, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, Like a Dragon Ishin, and God of War Ragnarok's story trailer. And that moment, that's when I was like, this is a sequel. It is a sequel. Like, they had the set pieces, had like the grandeurs. I remember when we watched it, we were like, oh my god, it's like, why did I ever doubt this? And then it went gold the day after, so I was like, I can finally be excited. And then nothing really happened afterwards until that game came out. If I'm perfectly honest, I enjoyed how we did 2 evergreen episodes in a row around that time, because we both did the spoiler cast for Ragnarok, and we did the definitive ranking for the Assassin's Creed franchise,
which was a really fun process.
Yes, because it was like a fun going through game to game, and then us ranking and us giving our ranking, and then doing the whole math of us realizing which one's gonna be the best one, and us declaring
really having to make some tough calls there.
Yeah, I'm glad that we declared Brotherhood the best game. Like at the end, like I'm
glad that we had little moments where we would have a close tie between our scores, and was like, all right, let's debate. And sometimes it was like immediately like put that one below this one, and sometimes it was like no, let's talk about it, let's see.
Yeah, with Origins and Odyssey, it's where we had to like do more of a concession there.
Yeah, we had to make some decisions on how we were really going about that. But I really enjoyed our process of problem solving there.
Oh, absolutely. So, and I feel like also what makes Assassin's Creed episode special was that's when I became a seasoned gaming writer. It was around this time, and that was my first article.
We have to wrap this up very soon. I just noticed. I realize how we're at. So but I love this process for everything with Assassin's Creed and going the spoiler casts. Spoiler casts are some of my favorites.
Yeah,
we really get to just go for it.
Yeah, and that's what's so funny of you mentioning about wrapping it up, because what was 23 most of our content? Just talking about games.
It was everything that kept coming out.
Exactly.
There was that brief moment at the start though, where we were like, man, I hope this comes, like everything starts coming out soon. It's going to be interesting.
Yes, but it was like 2023 was really, if there's something I really love about most of our content that happened in 2023 that nothing really stands out for me, is more that because finally we were at a year where we were getting so much content, like actual content, tangible content, like games to play. Most of our episodes were finally that. Even if there was bad stuff like Redfall, where we brought our friend Duncan to talk about the game, it was like our 100th episode hitting the Jedi Survivor spoiler cast, the brutal like you and Sebastian whipping the whip at Hogwarts Legacy, when you were having that conversation. That's still kind of like one of, if there's an episode that year that I really regret, it's that one not playing much of that game to provide the actual counterpoint, because it was like I just let you guys, like I actually went into that episode expecting that it was going to be praised because of what I had played was so positive, and then I was like, what happened? It was like I was not expecting that.
A lot of stuff going on with that, but it's like it's one of those, it's all right, but then it just goes on for far too long than it needs to.
It's like I'm still impressed for what it is, but it's still obviously it didn't stick with me like other games I did that year. But I'll never forget that. I was like, man, my reaction to this Nintendo Direct we did with him, where Metroid Prime was announced, the GBA games, you screenshotted me like screaming.
That was a very fun just set of reaction images of Alejandro going insane in various ways. So since we have less than 10 minutes for this, because Elizabeth has to start at 1 p.m. here, what can we do to cover our last little bit here to really encompass everything?
Because the thing is, I only mentioned like it's just content that we have been recording, and because it's like,
I guess closing thoughts might be a better statement for all this. Then.
Exactly, because the majority of our content in 2023 and 2024, the memorable stuff is us talking deep about games, and recently we talked about Rebirth that way. That's still like one of our most watched videos now. Like after I put so much ungodly effort into like B-roll for that one.
I'm glad it was validating that you put all that in there.
Yeah, it's just fun seeing like in the 150 episodes we did how like that first year we had to really make lemons out of lemonade. I was getting back into the groove of things.
Other way around.
Lemonade out of lemons. And and then like some of the favorite content was when we really laser focused on a game. The FF16 spoiler cast halfway through that year, where at the end I was like crying, just talking about like the impact of that story is like
I love that games can make us emotional.
Yes, and considering a lot of the news that happened around this time, like gaming wise, were like all so bad. I feel like us focusing on my favorite things about this last period, later half, has been just talking about the fun we had with games. Really encompasses how like this show really evolved, and as we kind of like wrap up, I mentioned to you too that your 3 favorite games from this period that you think. Go.
I think I have nailed down, depends on our rules,
Mm-hmm.
Armored Core 6,
Yeah.
because that was just such an amazing experience. Elden Ring, for the
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons. And then if we're allowing the update situation, I would say Cyberpunk
So
2077.
yeah, it's allowed because Phantom Liberty came out
Right.
at that time, and to me my favorite stuff was obviously Elden Ring, also Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Final Fantasy 16 were my 3.
Yeah.
If I were to have added a 4th, that would be Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
That was my 4th as well.
Yes, yeah, because it was like that was my Breath of the Wild is overrated too. Holy crap, this is my favorite Zelda.
Yep.
So it was like that was like those moments. And your biggest disappointment that happened with with the 3 years.
It has to be Forspoken.
Forspoken? Were
Yeah,
you anticipating it? Like really?
When I saw that Project Athia,
Oh, okay.
I was like, this is the like Avatar: The Last Airbender fantasy game that we've been waiting for, with like the crazy magic and everything. And I was so over the moon for that concept. And then when everything else got released for it, or revealed for it rather, that hype died on the vine in a second. And then when the game came out, it just soured me even more on it. The only other thing that could come close to it was probably like Starfield.
That was mine. That was
because, but like I had to fight it because it was like, well, for 60 hours, I loved it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it sucked.
Yes. That one, how I see it, like for me, why it starts because I almost said Spider-Man 2, but for full transparency, I actually started playing it again. I'm like, I cannot in good conscience say that because a lot of my criticisms.
I would have gone after you if you had.
Yes,
like
but
after everything.
My biggest disappointing news, if we were had to do that, is the fact that Insomniac is now a Marvel studio for this next decade. For a talented studio, I feel they deserve to be more than just a Marvel, kind of like a Marvel machine. But Starfield, I bought a system for it, literally.
Yeah.
You did too. It was like that was the template of the dream game. Obviously, a few episodes ago, I was like, part of me still roots for it. I'm rooting for they're patching it this Wednesday for 60 frames. Unfortunately, you won't be able to because that's just a Series X thing. Series S is not gonna do the thing, but I think you don't mind because you can play it normally. Like it works fine in 30, but it's like that's a game that I hoped against all dreams. I wanted that to both be Xbox's coup de grace. I needed that to be kind of like the game that if Sony can hang its hat on God of War and Spider-Man, Nintendo can hang its hat on Zelda and Mario. What did Xbox have with Halo, like completely like shit in the bed and being good now, but it's like its reputation is now in taters. Like no one's ever gonna give it credit anymore. I needed Starfield to be that for them, especially for the guys that give Skyrim the best RPG of the 360 and PS3 era. It's like I wanted them to have another moment, and it just wasn't that. And that's what makes it so disappointing because it's like, this should have been like a game of the generation. And my personal disappointment at launch with Spider-Man 2's bugginess aside is like, that game was not why I bought a PS5. That was just kind of like one more of the things. Starfield was why I bought an Xbox. And now look where Xbox is.
That's like a fair assessment to say.
Yeah, so that's why Starfield is the disappointment of that period. Spider-Man, you get scot free because I played you yesterday. I would have mentioned you after that because that's also the most just quick. The spoiler cast we did for Spider-Man 2 is the most interesting one because that was the rare time we didn't rave about a game that we had covered. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was like the most like, oh yeah, this wasn't what.
Well, it was complex because we were like. At first we were saying like, oh man, there's some crazy moments, we were really loving it, and then afterwards we were both sitting there and then like, wait, that might not have been as good as we thought, and then you were like, yes, whoa, hang on.
I know. And, that was like the new game plus situation also compounded like some disappointment towards that game, but it's still a really great game, I tell you. But it's everything I have for our celebration. Like I feel like we're managed to like cover it. That's what's so funny. Like we focused so much early on a bunch of stuff because I had fun memories of that first year and how we tried stuff. How you see our evolution. If you go all the way from episode 1 to like 33, you'll see kind of like weird like experimentation and format changes and us like and us doing stuff. And then as the show went on, it just became more of a. We're talking about great games and bad news. So the later half of the show is not as memorable other than the fact that Sebastian joined in to cover when you were gone. and me bringing Rick Hogue and Travis from IGN those few episodes also like late last year to have more people kind of like come in the rotation. That hopefully sets the tenure of how I'm gonna try to keep the show going as you're in paternity leave. But
Yeah.
Paul, before we wrap up, read us for the last time in a while the releases for May 19th to May 25th.
All right. Well, we have Songs of Conquest on the PC on May 20th, Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder on PC May 21st, Paper Trail, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, and iOS and Android on May 21st, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, Xbox Series X and S and PC on May 21st.
Finally.
System Shock, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, May 21st. X Defiant coming out finally on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on May 21st. Bread and Fred on the Switch, May 23rd. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami on Switch and PC, May 23rd. Eternal Threads, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch on May 23rd. Haunty with Two Eyes on PC on May 23rd. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Switch on May 23rd, and World of Goo 2, Switch, PC, and Mac on May 23rd. There we go.
Yeah, May has been really quiet. Everything is coming in May 21st, to tell you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like Hellblade 8 Game Pass, so cool. System Shock, really interesting to see how that port goes, because Prey is a spiritual successor to System Shock. Like, right. Systemic wise, like a lot of people like with that praise Prey is because it's like, oh yeah, it's like for everyone that misses System Shock in the 90s, like this is like a modern version of that. So I really want to hear how that goes. X Defiant is a free to play game. We talked about it's being a Call of Duty, a new version of Call of Duty. I want to see how that works. And Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, it's an amazing RPG from the GameCube era, and I'm glad it's finally on Switch. I'm absolutely gonna be all over that one. Paul, it's been a pleasure getting to do a lot of this show with you for 150 episodes. It's not a goodbye because you're still gonna be doing the thumbnails, but at least in you being like my co-pilot, like consistent co-pilot, it's like that takes a break for at least the next 3 months, and no one knows what happens usually in 3 months. So that's gonna be like a fun summer for you to get to step back, and me get to keep the show going. You're always like, if somehow time allows it for you and you're interested, you're always free. But I know that baby takes center stage. So, and I'm gonna respect that. And good thing I trained this year to be able to carry the show like with you. So I've been like getting ready for this moment, but I only look back with fondness to a lot of the 150 episodes we've done, and the fact that here's the thing. I'm not gonna see you. I'll still chat with you.
Yep.
Like our group chat is still always there. So it's just a goodbye of you seeing you in the show. But it's still like we'll still keep our arrangement going because there's a few games that we'll definitely want to keep playing and all that. But more like in a more casual way instead of just like
for my last thoughts. As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. Nowhere else for right now. I'm always going to be around though, especially in our clan chat. Look forward to seeing everybody, hearing from y'all again, and stay safe and press X to play.
Yes.
Good
and
night,
you know
everybody.
where you can find me, people. He has to go now. So we'll see you in the next one, Paul, and everyone. Again, see you until the next time. Bye bye.